Yeah. Oh, we're on air? Okay. It is 9:28. This is a regular meeting of the Third Laguna Hills Mutual Board of Directors, a California nonprofit mutual benefit corporation. I will now call the meeting to order, and we have a quorum. And I would ask Director Frankel, would you please lead the Pledge of Allegiance? Director Frankel.
Please follow me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of our United States of America. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Director Frankel. Okay, we'll acknowledge the media may be present, but I don't see any here in the audience or on Zoom at the moment. Approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda? I see Director Rain Sosak, and I see Director Laws seconds. So we have a motion on the floor to approve the agenda. Is there any discussion about the agenda as presented? Hearing none, unless I hear differently, I will assume that the agenda is approved by consent. Hearing no dissent, the agenda is approved as presented. We now move to the approval of the minutes. We have the January 7th, 2022 agenda prep meeting minutes, the January 18th, 2022 regular board meeting minutes. We have the February 1st, 2022 special open meeting minutes. We have the February 3rd, 2022 emergency open meeting minutes. And we have the February 4th, 2022 agenda prep meeting minutes. On the January 7th, there's an adjustment. It lists me as being absent. I was excused from that meeting. That's when I was out of the country. So I should be excused on the January 7th minutes. Other than that, are there any changes or Director Laws?
Yes, for 5B, January 18th, page 16 of 22. That is where the lease cap was discussed. There's no mention in the minutes that there were a lot of member comments, so I don't know if that should be in here or not, but that's one thing. And then the other thing is the very last paragraph. It says Director Lewis made a motion. That should actually be Director Cook. He's the one who made that motion to send the item back to committee. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to assume, since I don't hear anything from Director Cook or Director Lewis, that they're in agreement with you. All right, so we change that to Director Cook. As for member comments, we don't normally list in each motion that there's member comments. All righty, are there any other changes or corrections regarding all those minutes or meeting reports? Hearing none, with those two adjustments, can I get a motion to approve the 5 different sets of notes, minutes, reports that are under item number 5? Can I get a motion to approve them? I see Director Wayne moves to approve with those 2 adjustments. Director Frankel seconds. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I will again assume then by consent that, Director Lewis, you have your hand up?
Yes, when it gets to the point where to approve all these, I can only do the ones that I was in attendance for. I was absent, excused for several of these meetings that week.
Okay, so you want to be listed as abstaining from those that you were not present? Is that correct?
Yes.
All right, so let me ask this question. For those, I also was not present for one, which I would abstain from as well. So if Director Lewis and I were not present, we want to be listed as abstaining from those that we were not present for. Otherwise, we are in agreement to approve the ones that we were present for. Is that correct, Director Lewis? Okay. How did anybody else? Hearing no other objections then, with that caveat that Director Lewis abstains from those he wasn't present, and I abstain from the one I wasn't present, we move to approve all of the minutes as presented with those two original corrections of the January 7th and the January 18th. Okay? All righty. Moving along. Report of the chair. I don't have anything to report at this point, so we'll go now to Director Di Lorenzo from VMS, who will give us the update on the VMS board, please.
Good morning, Mr. President, fellow board members, and members of our community. And I want to thank Siobhan for the hard work that she does in helping to, or putting this report together. I think we have to find someone else to do it. You're very busy, but it's always so well done. So I'm going to, do we have it, or is it going to come up? Okay. No, that isn't our.
No, that is the wrong set. That was what was.
I'm going to say, if I'm going to report on HOA reserves, that's really a surprise, but I'll wing it.
While we're waiting on that,
All
I
right,
want
well, while we're winging, I could talk.
While we're waiting on that, I want to just say, I should have said in my chair remarks that we want to welcome Siobhan Foster to her first meeting with us as our new CEO. Welcome. We're pleased to have you here in that capacity.
Thank you very much.
So I'm going to start because it isn't like there are a lot of charts, so I could talk to it. So the VMS board is constantly striving for success, and our success is to our success will be achieved by improving the service levels, because that is what we deliver. We deliver service. Some might question that from time to time. Our guiding principle is our commitment to excellence. Again, our dedication to service. We're very positive and results-oriented, and we desperately want to enhance customer service experience and the quality for life and for all of the people who live in the village. Okay, all right, so I'm not up to that slide yet, but hold it there, okay? So what we did is we've been, VMS is about 6 years old. And, we started with a CEO, then we went with a CEO and a COO. And a lot of us in our background come from a lot of business experiences. And we felt that there was a good amount of duplication in the CEO and COO. They didn't split out the work as we would have done, or I would have done in my past life. So we met, and when we voted Siobhan onto the position, we said, we've been looking at this, and we said, we really, really want to reorganize this. And we eliminated the position of the COO. We had to convince all of the board presidents by showing them actual paperwork that this move that we were making was going to save us some money, which it did. And Robert was really tough on us, but we convinced him it was a good move. So the way we have it is there are certain departments who just report right to the CEO. And that in business, even in the businesses I was in, which was service, it's usually finance, it's usually sales and marketing, which for us here is communication. So we had, for this, because it's so big, we have IT reporting directly to her. And in here, there will be an organization chart, which is too small for us to read, but it is part of the report, and all the directors know about it. So one of the first things we did, and we really tried to focus on promoting from within, is Carlos Rojas, who the director of security, was promoted to director of operations. I'm not going to read all this, about his background, et cetera, but he's going to really work closely with maintenance and construction, landscape, security, and general services. And the reason for that is not to create another layer, but to have someone who could immediately handle any situations with those departments and work with the department heads, so that Siobhan could be involved in be the umbrella of the organization. One of the things that we have found, and I think that this is going to work beautifully, is sometimes the departments don't talk to one another as much as they could. Because I know in the past, so they're out there planting all flowers in front of my building, and the next day the painters come. And I'm sure that you could probably all give me a little story or two, and even all the people at home. So we're really trying to improve the communication with the departments and handle any major issues that are coming up in departments. And I have to say that we have a very lively board of directors on VMS, but also on all the other boards, and we encourage them to let us know if there are challenges. So Carlos has been promoted, and we're very excited about working with him. And he was key in this community, his organization skills when we were working on the pandemic, when we were working on getting the, I always want to use the wrong term, getting the vaccines. I always say injections, and Annie will probably say, that's not the right term. But so he worked very closely in keeping that organized. The other person who we moved up, and again, we like to focus on moving our employees up. We keep training them and working with them, and to move them up is really a good thing. So we promoted Catherine Laster. Catherine came to us probably when we first became VMS, and she has been outstanding. She worked originally as the admin for the CEO, and then we basically had her cross-training in so many of the different departments. So if you wanted to know where Catherine was, she was working in reservations. And she was, while she was working, she was looking at things that could be improved and has made some tremendous recommendations that we followed up on. So she is going to be in charge of service, which means that she's going to work with the admins. She's going to work with our events department, where we would like to improve our service in that department. And she has a tremendous background in the village. She knows the village, and probably many, if any of you have had any things that you've had to deal with, Catherine has probably been the person you've worked with. So we're very proud of her. And it's very wonderful to be able to, oh, we've promoted 2 women. Isn't that great? And I wasn't even trying to do that. But I think it's a great thing, and it shows a lot for our community. The other thing that we did is we promoted 2 people from within in the finance department. And the biggest thing we said, we interviewed a lot of people, we had a panel, and we said, our people are really good. The problem is that the finance department didn't really have a reputation of being warm and friendly and helpful. But when we worked with these gentlemen, they really are very warm and friendly and helpful. And they are very knowledgeable. And we have met with them, with Siobhan. And one of the biggest things is we have to improve the image of the finance department, because they should be like the backbone of a lot of the things that we do. And they're very, very proud of having these new positions. And we're very excited about it. And we thank you, Siobhan, for working with them. The next slide is our organization chart, which you could see up there, but I'm certainly not going to go into it. But for those of you who all have a copy of this, it's there. Can people get a copy of this presentation, Siobhan?
Sure, they can. They can email the general manager's office and we will send it. Also, the website contains the organization chart if anyone's interested in going directly there.
And how do they contact the general manager's office?
Just email generalmanager.vmsinc.org.
Thank you. Probably Catherine will be answering it. Oh, I'm kidding. All right. The other thing that we really started last year for us is key performance indicators. And we were doing the same departments a lot. We were doing resident services because it's service after all. So we had a meeting with Catherine, because Catherine was the person who was working on this part of VMS. And we said, we have to focus on challenging departments. So one of the first departments we worked on was sales, unit sales. And the next department that we're working on, and we're very excited, is manor alterations. So our first report will be next month. And what we're going to report on is we're going to identify problems, we're going to agree upon corrective action, and we're going to document any improvements and see if they worked, if they didn't work, or what else we could do. So I think that will be very exciting for us. One of the other parts of VMS's report is to report on our completed service orders. And some of you might say, well, 0 to 20 days, that's too much. Should be 0 to 2 days. Well, because I'm somebody who pushes hard. The reason why we have 0 to 20 days is because in many areas, we have to get parts, or we have to get things that we need in order to be able to get that work done. Years and years ago, years and years, when I was first on the board, it was probably 0 to 120 days, because all of the board members would get a ton of, nobody's getting back to me. It's getting done. I still believe we have that a little bit, but it was tremendous in the past. And the last thing that I want to report on is the fact that on March 22nd, we and VMS is going to have a strategic planning meeting. And we've also talked to the board presidents about this. And you say, well, why a strategic planning meeting? Well, the last strategic planning meeting was 5 years ago, right? And the thing is we're changing. And the biggest part of our plan has to be to improve service. In the hospitality industry that I come from, we would not ever want to meet the service request. We always wanted to exceed the expectations of our community. And, we're talking about meeting the expectations of our community. Someday, I would like us to exceed the expectations of our community. So we're having this strategic planning meeting on March 22nd. Siobhan will give the boards more information on this. It is going to be a virtual meeting. We have used the strategic planning coach before, and she's quite good, and we're looking forward to it. That is what I have to report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director DiLorenzo. Are there any questions for Director DiLorenzo regarding her presentation? I'm looking around. Seeing Director Laws.
Yes, you mentioned that 89% of service orders were completed within 20 days. Is there a target for 2022?
Well, I already joked about it and said I would like it to be 2 days, but I believe that we could probably have them different per department. Maybe carpentry is the one, and if you look on this list, it's at 86%. Maybe that's one of the areas where they need to get things. But on the areas where it just has to do, and maybe appliances is the same thing, but appliances isn't one of our, we don't work with appliances in third. That is really something for United because they have appliances with the co-ops. But I think we would be able to look at this and fine tune it to have tougher goals. Did you want to say something, Siobhan?
Yes, I did. The next step that we are working on as a department head team is breaking down those services and identifying more finite goals for each service. So when there is a wait for a part or a wait for equipment, that doesn't skew the rest of the service numbers. So we are working on that now.
See, I sort of gave you that answer, and I was just winging it.
Well,
She gave you a good firm answer. And thank you for asking a question, because I got to come up again, and I neglected to say, we welcome you, Siobhan, with open arms.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Director Laws, go
and
ahead.
one other thing. So,
Is
me
this for
personally,
me or Siobhan?
but kind of both, just in general, tickets closed is great. I feel personally that I've created the same ticket multiple times that just get closed, and then I have to go, and create it again, versus a capability of reopening it, for instance. Maybe that'll come with the new ERP or something. So hopefully there's matching goals to make sure that we're not focusing on one thing to the detriment of others. Thank you both.
And if I could add one thing, we did recently relaunch our customer satisfaction survey. So when you do have service tickets that are closed, a random sample of our community will get a customer satisfaction, real quick 5-question survey. And we encourage people to fill that out, because that gives us, constructive feedback, I guess.
Okay. And those results will be shared periodically at these board meetings?
Yes, or at least at the VMS board meeting, yes.
Okay, fantastic.
And we would share it with, not only if they're good, we would share it with the community and certainly with the board members.
Okay.
I'm glad that you brought that up. Here I am still talking. One of the goals that I've had from the beginning is that we had a lot of the service ticket situation more automated, and especially as we look to the new types of people who are moving in here, people who have jobs, people who are very computer savvy. they're going to want to do it that way, and I believe that's going to really improve things a lot too, really. And that's why I'm very excited about the new system, but I'll let Siobhan talk about that, not me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving along. That was the VMS Board update. We now go to the open forum for speakers. Do we have people online who want to speak?
Yes, it looks like we have one person.
Okay, if you'd bring that person in.
Yes.
And that person has 3 minutes and can address at this point in time any topic that is not on the agenda. Okay?
Oh, never mind. It looks like they may have left the Zoom meeting.
No, there's somebody in here now,
Oh,
Jules
there we
Allen.
go. Perfect.
If you unmute yourself, Mr. Allen, you can speak. Mr. Allen, if you please unmute yourself.
We do have several email comments if we would like to move on and come back.
Why don't you go ahead and we'll read, if that's the only person that was live, we'll then go to the emails. So go ahead and let's start reading the emails.
Okay, so we have one from Joe and Bill Gross, Manor 3199A, and their email says, "Makes sense to charge."
Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Hello? Did you find me?
We can hear you and your 3 minutes, you have your 3 minutes, please.
Okay, thank you. I recently delivered nearly 700 recall petitions, and a recall vote is now scheduled. However, Peggy Moore, a defender of Rob Muchnick, claims that many of the petitions were rejected. But how can that inside information possessed by Rob Muchnick wind up with his champion, Peggy Moore, an ordinary member of Third, and not with me? I'm the guy who initiated the recall, drafted and distributed the petition, authored every supporting e-blast. Davis Sterling Section 7511 says I'm the person entitled to call the meeting if the board doesn't, yet that so-called information was not sent to me. It was instead leaked to Peggy Moore. So who leaked it and why? Well, the purpose is obvious: to denigrate the recall, to minimize the number of legitimate petitions filed. 700, when elections sometimes involve fewer than 2,000 votes overall, is a pretty impressive number, whereas 306, 5% of the membership, sounds rather puny, doesn't it? Now, who could possibly have an interest in demeaning the effort to recall Rob Muchnick, other than Rob Muchnick himself? So do you think that Rob Muchnick had a hand in giving that supposed inside information to Peggy? Put another way, does a dog have fleas? Come on. And how do we know that Peggy's information is even truthful? And that's the problem with Rob Muchnick controlling the recall process. It stinks to high heaven. There is such a conflict of interest here. We saw it when the board delayed the vote until almost the last minute. They should have scheduled the election in 2 months, not delayed it for 5. Rather than recuse himself, Muchnick's fingerprints are all over it. The decision to schedule the vote as late as possible, leaking inside information about the legitimacy of the petitions. Both those actions appear to help Rob Muchnick. So his failure to distance himself from those recall-related activities is just another example of a corrupting of the system. Also, Rob, changing the subject, can you please provide the actual amounts Third paid for property insurance in 2019, 20, and 21, as you promised Carol Moore 2 months ago. Thank you.
Okay, you want to read the emails, please?
Yes, give me one moment.
But first remove him from the,
Okay, perfect. So the first one we have is from Joe and Bill Gross, Manor 3199A. And their email states, makes sense to charge 2+ occupants an additional fee. We are a yes. We have Charles Collins, Manor 5545A. They said, suggest go to $100 a month for each occupant over 2. Elaine Kashima, Manor 3159B. They said, I believe that $50 for a third-person resident in a single household is too low. Perhaps it should be increased to $75. We have Paul Scottberg, Manor 3018A. On the surface, I am against the additional fee. At $50 per month times 73 residents, that is additional fees in excess of $43,000 per month. I fail to see how 73 resident units would incur that amount of additional costs. I also request that you re-request this input from our community, but also request that you include the data that you reviewed that would validate this $50 monthly fee. From Mike Radcliffe, Manor 23943C. Well, since an additional charge of $50 per month for over 2 occupants may be employed, can I get $50 per month back since I live alone? This would be the right thing to do. From Rosemary Quinn, Manor 5480B. I agree with this new charge. Let's see here. From Pat Rodriguez, or Patricia Rodriguez, Manor 3407A. I agree it is reasonable to charge $50 per month per person for manor occupied by more than 2. From Patricia Black, Manor 3112P. Yes, that is a reasonable amount to cover costs. From Madeline Whiteman, Manor 23533B. They said, ladies and gentlemen, I read your endorsement to the board dated December 28th, 2021 to lower the rental cap to 25%. I believe Ms. Bashlin may have misinterpreted how Civil Code 4741 reads when she noted that lowering the lease cap from 30% to 25% in order to align with state legislative guidelines. Please read what the Civil Code actually says about rental restrictions in paragraph B of the Civil Code. And then she states the Civil Code 4741, permissible rental prohibitions and restrictions. An owner of a separate interest in a common interest development shall not be subject to a provision in governing document or an amendment to a governing document that prohibits, has the effect of prohibiting or unreasonably restricts the rental or leasing of any of the separate interests, accessory dwelling units, or junior accessory dwelling units in that common interest development to a renter, leasee, or tenant. And then section B says, a common interest development shall not adopt or enforce a provision in governing document or amendment to a governing document that restricts the rental or lease of separate interests with a common interest to less than 25% of the separate interests. Nothing in the subdivision prohibits a common interest development from adopting or enforcing a provision authorizing a higher percentage of separate interest to be rented or leased. Reducing the rental cap is not the intention of this code, nor AB 3182, which amended this code. The purpose was to increase rental housing opportunities in associations that did not allow rental or had much lower minimum. It is assumed that renting will allow people who cannot afford to purchase would still be able to find housing. And to the question of what is affordable housing, the Affordable Housing Institute defines it as the most commonly occurring definition of an affordable housing is that used by the United States government, which defines affordable housing as housing and related expenses that do not exceed 30% of a household's income. With an average rental in the market today in Laguna Woods of $26.21, that would mean to be affordable, the household income would have to be $104,832 for a renter in Laguna Woods. I asked the committee to not reduce the minimum rentals allowed down to 25%. What you are attempting to do is not about compliance with the law, but taking away property rights. We have one from Alfred and Nadine Meisner, Manor 3071B. To the third Laguna Hills Mutual Board of Directors, this is our opinion. This is our opinion and wish that you read this letter at the third Laguna Hills Mutual Board meeting to be held on February 15, 2022. We are in favor of charging $50 per month for each resident over 2 residents in a single manor. In fairness to others, all additional residents beyond 2 in a manor should pay $50 each month to contribute their share to the cost of running and maintaining our community. For this reason, we ask that you vote to approve this measure as recommended by the Resident Policy and Compliance Committee. We have David Hastings, Manor 3064B. I agree and support this change. Thank you. We have Emmett Hines, Manor 2228E. I think this would be a fair way to keep down expenses. Some of the units only have one person occupying it. This would be a good solution to equalize the situations and perhaps keep from constantly raising monthly fees. Kathy Cram, Manor 5008. Yes, it seems fair to me that occupants over 2 in a manor pay $50 to the HOA. Kathy Rose, no, I disagree with charging an additional $50 or anything for that matter for occupancy above 2. Is there a discount if only one person lives in their unit? I thought not. Our homeowner's fee is high enough. By the way, ours is 1 tenant household, so I have no dogs in the fight. I simply think it's a bad idea, and we're getting nickeled and dimed to death by the $50 bill. Laguna Woods should be better than that. Daria Wetchen from Manor 5381A. Sounds like a bait and switch to me. We do not have a third resident, but if I had purchased a 3-bedroom manor and then was told the person reading in the 3rd bedroom, or residing in the 3rd bedroom, would be charged an additional fee, I would consider this a fine. I vote no and would ask for further introspection by the board. Other methods can certainly be employed to reduce water usage or stagger the use of facilities. Living here for 6 months and find decisions are made by a draconian leadership with little foresight. Very unfortunate. We have Kathy Garis from Manor 3138B with regard to charging a modest $50 for a 3rd person living with 2 in a single manor. The cost of all our amenities has risen and must be a shared expense. Madeline Whitman, Manor 23533B. Dear board members, I oppose charging an additional $50 per month for each tenant in a manor over 2. My first thought when I read this was proposed was that this is a senior community. Many older people have or get physical issues and need a caregiver to help them. They may need full-time help. I feel this would place an additional burden on an already trying situation. There is also the scenario when a parent has to move in with a child for medical or financial issues, or where a child has to move back with the parents because of these issues. The pandemic has seen so many different changes in our living situations, so these are just a few. I believe there is a rule of thumb that allows 2 people per bedroom plus 1. The amount of bedrooms in a unit might be considered if you are imposing an additional charge that went over that limit. Do you really know how many people use each community facility that tax it? And if you're talking about community washers/dryers, then lift some of those restrictions that would allow more units to have their own in-unit laundry. It seems to me you would be placing another restriction on property rights. Thank you for your time. Christopher Quilter from Manor 211P. Greetings, directors. Thank you for your efforts to communicate with your members and solicit their thoughts. To make this process even more transparent, can I recommend that you have one email address that goes to all directors? Mr. Muchnick's email address seems to be inclusive, but it only goes to him, and I don't want to say anything to the board that I wouldn't say to you all. I don't have a problem with increasing the fees on manors with more than 2 occupants, but I do have a problem with the steep increases in our HOA fees. Might we have a conversation about why we pay around $100 per month than owners of equivalent cooperatives? If they're operating more effectively or efficiently, I should say, than we are, can we adopt some of their best practices? Just one example, I rent my unit to a close friend and model tenant. I pay an annual renewal fee, which is fine, but the amount of time and staff work that goes into each annual renewal each year is wasteful. With thanks for your service. We have Marie Peck. Manor 33580. Another fee, please no. Let's take the fees already assessed and make that money count for more with our 2 largest expenditures. 1, create one committee focused solely on insurance negotiations day after day, year after year, nothing else, just insurance. We are 18,000 strong. We can negotiate with insurance companies or form our own. 2, create one committee focused 100% on water, repipe the areas that don't use reclaimed water, re-landscape properly for this climate, install 21st century meters that indicate water usage for each unit, and can find leaks before they disgorge thousands of gallons of water. You may find the money you need right there. No, I don't have a third person living here yet, but when I do need a caretaker, I will be paying plenty for that. Definitely don't need yet another fee. Kathy Rose, Manor 34211F. No, I disagree with charging an additional $50 or anything for that matter for occupancy above 2. Is there a discount if only one person lives in their unit? I thought not. Our homeowner's fee is high enough. I believe I did read this. This might be a duplicate. My apologies. There's Betty Welchel, Manor 3174B. Yes, $50 monthly should be charged for each individual greater than 2 residents in a single manor. This $50 should be used for meeting expenses, not for some new project. Tamara Bickford, 3360P. Yes, totally appropriate to charge extra $50 per month for extra person. Covers use of more water, additional garbage generated, use of facilities. Single residents pay full price with no consideration for less use of all these, make things more equitable. Gregory Seller, Manor 53711B. We agree that each individual greater than 2 residents living in a single manor should pay the HOA an additional $50 per month. It is only fair that they pay for the added expense and use of facilities by additional residents greater than 2. We support the board adopting this policy as recommended by the Resident Policy and Compliance Committee. E.J. Russell, Manor 3495C. Extra residents must pay? Absolutely. Shared cost means everyone. Fair is fair. Those of us paying our shared don't need residents getting a free ride. An extra $50 is still a heck of a good deal. Marilyn Handelman, Manor 3451C. It's about time all the boards of Laguna Woods stop snickering dollars here and there and remember this is a senior community built with HUD funds so seniors would have a place to live out of their lives comfortably. Many seniors living here since the Social Security base was very low before there were IRAs. At that rate you are going, monthly dues will soon be more than anyone gets from Social Security. Some of the seniors have caregivers living with them. Some have married children living with them because they cannot take care of themselves anymore. There are no provisions in the tax codes to deduct for family caregivers. Stop it. Instead of adding to monthly bills, cut down on expenses like paying for private secretaries for the president of third because he is too lazy to handle what presidents have been handling for over 60 years. Cut down on all the cell phones, cut down on all the perks, cut down on the shyster lawyers. One lawyer doing a proper job would be enough for this community. Remember, this is not a fancy Beverly Hills gated community. This is Laguna Woods that was built to accommodate the elderly. It was built to give the elderly the feeling of a cruise ship, not a private club. It is provided for the elderly living here with the safe bus transportation 7 days a week and evenings to take you to the events here in the village. It provided for lovely and safe landscape. It provided for free or very inexpensive upkeep of the manors. Go back to a management company that knows how to manage the thousands of dollars a month we pay in monthly dues, that knows how to help the boards do their job efficiently. I have lived here 20 years and know what a wonderful place this was to live when it was run by knowledgeable people who care about the residents and follow David Sterling civil laws. Marjorie Oldfield, Manor 2258D. I agree that the board should charge each individual greater than 2 residents living in a single manor and third mutual pay the HOA an additional $50 per month. Many costs have been increasing due to COVID and inflation, so it seems reasonable to charge an additional $50 to $100 per person or per each additional person. Gail Ford, Manor 2297D. Regarding the communication below, I am in favor of charging additional fees for any additional residents. In addition to the points called out below, the more people in the house, the more water is used, more trash is generated, and more wear and tear on the community. I would even go as far to say as the charge should be $100 per month for each additional person. Ken Smith stated, hello, yes, we believe this is a good and fair idea. Ken and Patty Smith, Manor 47D. Lydia Radke, Manor 3060C. Yes, I agree. It is but right and fair that $50 be charged to each person residing in Manor meant only for 2 residents. Eddie Shaw or Edith Shaw, Manor 3275B. Dear Third Board, I opposed an increased occupancy fee for 3 people occupying a manor for the following reasons. 1, often an elderly couple need to have full-time assistance in their homes. I do not believe we should penalize people with disabilities who need live-in assistance. These residents are challenged enough with their physical handicaps that it would be an extra burden to charge them more per month. Sometimes also as an adult, child may have to move in to take care of their parents. I do not support a monetary penalty to physically challenged residents who need an extra assistance in their homes. 2, we are already charged so much now that it is getting unaffordable to live here, and the HOA is going up every year. This year we have a particularly inordinate raise in fees, and the promise is they will keep increasing. It is getting harder on a fixed income to absorb these fees as is. I would be okay with charging an occupancy for 4 or more occupants in a manor, but 3 occupants, absolutely not the reason stated above. We have Cecilia McLaughlin, Manor 23893G. If there is an increase for 3 or more occupants, there should be a reduction for single occupancy. Thank you for including this in the discussion. Karen Bauman Manor 3164A. All I can say is if the Resident Policy and Compliance Committee voted to recommend to the third board that each individual greater than 2 residents in a single manor and third mutual pay the HOA an additional $50 per month, then they should follow the same logic and reduce fees for 1 resident in a single manor. My recommendation, improve third mutual fiscal oversight and stop raising fees that ultimately are foolishly wasted. Margaret and Peter Haggart, Manor 2202B. We agree that manors with more than 2 full-time occupants should be charged the $50 per month fee for each occupant beyond 2. There may need to be an exception for caretakers. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. Moon Yun Manor 3104B. I am in favor of $50 or up to $100. How about a single occupancy? It may give a credit to HOA due. How about a vacant unit for vacations or snowbirds? Ron North, Manor 5490B. To whom it may concern, we are confused as we are already paying $100 a month for our extra person. Now you are trying to charge us more. You neglected to mention this charge in your email. Now everyone who reads this thinks there are freeloaders in their midst. Please set the record straight. Now if you want to save water, stop watering the grass so much and get plants that don't need water as much. Our grass area is muddy all the time and is watered way too much. My vote is no. Suzanne Savlov, Manor 40135 3F. Hello, we are an older population, and I feel that the 73 units that we have, more than 2 people living in a unit, you may have the same amount or more with only 1 person in a unit, and in that case, it cancels itself out. Many people who have another person living in the unit might be a family member who is acting as a caregiver to the older parents, and I feel that those people should not be charged an extra cost for the family living with them. Third needs to find other ways to make their budget stay up with the rising costs. For many years, property has been sold off, and it should have been taken into consideration to have had some of the property be money-making commercial property to help sustain the operating costs of the community rather than just selling off the land. One way of cutting costs is to have some else maintain the bus service, which I see has been done. The use of the bus service has seemed to have been less than when the past residents were here. As the population becomes more and more younger, the use of the golf carts and Uber will become more and more popular form of transportation. You might consider, instead of bus service, in prompting the use of Uber by our residents or offering the service of smaller vans to pick up the residents who request it. In the gate I live in, I see very few people waiting for the bus. Thank you. Bonnie Fox, Manor 30532B. First, please specify if a visitor is in your home, how long are they considered a visitor? Great idea to charge extra for additional persons. Parking is getting crazy and not sure who owns which space anymore. Second, who cleans trash bin area? I'm tired of sweeping up other people's dropped garbage. Please reply to me directly. Margaret Hagerman, Manor 22490. I agree to the increase for condos having more than 2 residences. The increase in water usage, additional expenses, and wear need to be considered. This also puts us more in line with United Mutual. Ann Biley, Manor 5443. I'm so glad that this was finally brought up. I feel that if a caretaker is needed where a couple resides, additional rates would be unthinkable, as caretakers are especially expensive but necessary to a person's health. However, having a companion, adult child, or other long-term guest should not be allowed. Don't want to be a snitch, but it happens a lot, especially when 2 cars appear every day when there should only be 1 resident and 1 car parked on the street in an eyesore. Geoff Finch, Manor 23533E. Hello, GRF. Not sure if this is correct. This might have been placed in here incorrectly. I apologize. We have Julia Fitzpatrick, Manor 2373A. Third board, thank you for asking my opinion. Yes, I think it is only fair that HOA dues should be at least partially based on occupancy. I agree with charging units with more than 2 occupants an additional $50 per month. Leonard Scheitman, Manor 5346A. Dear sir, I am guessing that the extra resident would probably be a caretaker. If that is the case, I think that this extra charge might be a burden to residents who have a difficult enough life. So while I appreciate the attention to improving our finances, especially in light of the 15% HOA recent increase, I think the proposal is a bit too much. P.S. Are you considering a new vote on the proposed amendment targeted solely on the insurance issue? Last year's proposed amendment failed because it was too broad and people were put off by the confusion, respectfully. We have John Clear, Manor 119P. Of course, you should charge an extra $50 per month for over 2 occupants. The question is, why haven't you done it already? So we do have Geoffrey Finch, Manor 23533E. I understand the argument that more residents on the premises has a cost and that such cost should be rightly be reflected in the terms of occupancy for residents. I think it is only fair to make such changes after an appropriate waiting period so that tenants can find an alternate arrangement and that landlords can arrange for the increases in rent from their tenants on a timely basis. Otherwise, this move simply penalizes landlords who have long-term leasing contracts in place with stable tenants. I request such action, if approved, become effective with the new 2023 year. Of course, I would prefer it not be approved at all. Best regards.
Excuse me, Michaela. Do we have a lot more?
Yes.
We have a lot more.
I would say there's about 20, 25 more in here.
Well, just for, at the moment, from now on, I think we're going to need to group them into categories so that we'll read a couple of representative ones and then maybe read the names of the other people who say the same kinds of things, just so that we don't spend,
For time purposes.
for time
Right.
purposes,
Okay.
right, that we at least acknowledge those individuals. Obviously, my email on this, my weekly email, got a lot of response.
Yes.
So this time we'll finish reading all of
Okay.
them. And then afterwards, we'll talk about a way to address this in the future.
Okay, perfect.
Go ahead.
Okay, we have Dina and Daniel Frio. Absolutely yes, and they're from Manor 3064A. Absolutely yes, they use all the facilities and services and use parking spots meant for guests. We think $50 is too low. $75 or $100 seems more fair, but $50 at least. We never realized they weren't paying extra. This is just plain unfair. Thank you for sharing plan to make things more equitable. Diane Jean, Manor 3080B, charging more money, enough is enough, no more money being charged. David Russell, Manor 5322B. My name is David Russell. We have a rental unit here, and we agree that if more than 2 people live in a unit, the fee should be increased due to the limited availability of parking. Thank you. Tina Lee, Manor 23902F. It sounds reasonable and I'm for it. Also, a single occupant's fee should be reduced in same manner. Thank you. Barbara Curran, Manor 3039P. Yes, I'm in favor of charging a third resident per unit $50 per month. Rose Corigliano, Manor 5571B. I definitely feel that additional people in a manor should pay extra than the normal HOAs. This was not meant for a rental community, but a living community for a family of retired people, usually two. Thank you for addressing this matter. This has also managed to make parking in many areas too crowded. Valerie Sand, Manor 40031A, Dear Third Mutual Board. Most units here have only one person. That limits the number of people using the facilities, water, garbage, parking, and everything else. It seems completely reasonable to charge $100 for more than two persons, and of course, there are three people sharing the living expenses. Arthur Levy, Manor 5578B. I think they should be charged $100, same as GRF, which should be close to the same as the cost of the amenities, which everyone else pays. Steve Yellen, Manor 53600. I oppose this motion. Reducing the cost of living in the third mutual community for residents should be the primary goal of the board. Pay for use needs to be the higher priority than any other consideration. A scan card security system could easily be implemented to assess usage fees for choices made by residents. Gary Soretsky, Manor 2206D. I think additional occupants beyond two occupants should pay additional fees to cover their water and amenity costs. We have Chris Quilter, Manor 2111P. First, thank you for your efforts to communicate with your members and solicit their thoughts. To make this process even more transparent, can I recommend that you have one email address that goes out to all directors? This was from an email earlier and then added on to it. Let me see here. No, actually, I'll skip that one. We do have Wang, Manor 5475A. I strongly support the proposed charge of $50 for the third person occupying a third mutual manor. We have Vincent Ivy Hissa, Manor 40042C. We are for the proposal regarding charging occupancy fee of $50 per month per person over two people in a single manor. We have James Scorch, Manor 5056. I agree that a manor housing more than two occupants should be charged an additional amount for each individual over two residing therein. The reasons listed in the email are well-founded and support the proposed additional charge of $50 per month for each additional occupant over two. Stella Shen, Manor 2248D. Agree to charge $50 per month for each resident in a single manor exceeding two individuals. Note, for me, an extra two persons will be charged $100 per month. Blaine Bardsley, Manor 3497. I say yes. Thank you. Tony Chen, Manor 3230C. I agree that we should charge $50 per month for a third person in the third mutual units. Dina and Daniel Frio, Manor 3064A. Absolutely, they use all the facilities and services and use parking spots meant for guests. We think $50 is too low. I would say $75 or $100, but $50 at least. Michael Paperman, Manor 2325D. I normally never get involved in politics, but all owners agree that due to the high cost of living and housing, not to mention other living expenses, our aging community needs to help with their finances to pay for their ongoing expenses, including food. That is why we have our own program set up for the needy in our community. Since their HOA has substantially raised the 2022 HOA dues to all owners and members, creating a greater burden on all members and renters, which was supposed to cover those issues, which in turn forced the owners to raise rents and members to financially have to find a way to cover those costs. We think it is unfair to burden both United and Third members whatsoever if they need to bring in a roommate or caregiver with an additional expense so that they can afford to continue living in their manors. Any additional cost creates more despair to our residents for those reasons. Most renters and members are in a financial crisis due to all the increases, and if they need to take on a roommate or live with a caregiver to be able to pay for their rents or HOA dues, and the HOA takes additional money, well needed, away from them to survive, that would be considered an atrocity and double dipping in our view. All residents pay their own electricity, so there is no additional cost to the HOA. Maintenance, repairs, insurance, et cetera, were part of the 2022 HOA dues increase, and water additional usage is negligent that one additional person might use. Some people take a 30-minute shower, and some of us, like myself, take 1 in 10 minutes. Extra automobiles entering the gates causing extra wear and tear to the streets is totally ridiculous. If that were the case, then all large delivery companies, including our own buses, should be charged a surcharge for entering the community, since they're the ones causing more wear and tear due to their size and weight, including and not limited to Edison, Amazon, garbage trucks, fire department, UPS, Home Depot, etc. If visitors and resident vehicles are causing damage to our roads, then our roads/tar covering costs are ineffective but have nothing to do with private automobiles. Okay, we do have a speaker request form from Joe Milliman, manor number 9693A. Oh, 3E, sorry. Apologies.
What am I? Okay. Hi, everybody. Thank you for your service. And thank you, Siobhan, for taking over the reins here. Glad to have you. I just want to say one thing, that when,
Excuse me, Joan, can you step closer to the mic?
how's that?
Turn up the volume a little bit for her.
Okay, I'm a little more soft-spoken than I should be sometimes. I just want to say that when we come up before you as speakers, it's important that we are speaking the truth. And I've heard some speakers that don't know all the facts, and that's the problem when we come up before you. We don't always know everything. And so I think it's important not only to speak the truth, but also not to use people's names to be accusatory for things that you do not know is absolutely the truth. And I think that's important. That's mainly all I want to say. Speak the truth, guys. And thanks for your opinions. I think they're important, and we all need to hear those. But they're opinions. And just, if you're going to accuse somebody of something, make sure it is the absolute truth, or don't do it.
Thank you.
Yes. We are almost done. We're on the final stretch. Okay, so we have Nancy Dick, Manor 3175A. I believe if we do this, we should credit owners with only one occupant. One occupant equals less vehicles, less water usage, and less laundry. I use my own laundry equipment, which also increases my electric. Being seniors should not eliminate choices or freedom within our homes. Boundaries are given, but this also almost sounds militant. This would also be another hardship for those that have been here many years and are struggling with current costs. What if they have a +1 live-in caretaker? I do not believe this issue would even be addressed outside a senior community, as families are not charged extra for additional family members. This reeks of ageism. The goal is to live in harmony and within budget. It's time for the association to be accountable and efficient as it once was, not dig up ways to charge residents even more. I have lived here going on 5 years. From day one, I have experienced higher costs and less maintenance overall. I have moved here because of the dancing clubs, class workouts at the gym, and art classes. I also moved here to rid myself of yard work. There is now less and older exercise equipment in the gyms. The hours have been cut, which makes it very inconvenient for those that like or need evening workouts. I have now resorted to my own gym equipment, which would rule out filling my own second bedroom with an additional occupant. The entire atmosphere has changed so much. Granted, COVID has played a big part, but I fear we are losing a great deal more, the soul of the community. Judith Batcher, Manor 2397, charging a third condo resident $50 a month seems like a fair policy. Arlene and Fred Eckstein, Manor 3414P. We are in favor of charging each person residing in a third mutual manor in excess of 2 people an amount of $50 per person per month. We're also in favor of changing the bylaws to allow the purchase of a lesser amount of insurance in order to reduce the monthly homeowner dues. Susan Smallwood, Manor 3456B. Third's board meeting. I object to the fee increase of $50 per month for a third person living in a unit to cover costs of water, etc. My objection is that some of our elderly have had to move a son, daughter, caregiver to help take care of them. Many are stretched to the max with their Social Security. We just had a $109 hike. Now another $50 equals $159 per month for a total monthly HOA fee of $827.12. I talked in depth with my 96-year-old neighbor, and it continues to cause great concern at these large increases. So many of her friends are scrapping by, often choosing not to buy their medication or food. I believe that third is still using potable or drinking water for all landscape in Gate 14. The cost of water is rising, and it's time to look into conserving with drip irrigation. The water district did not bring recycled water up to Gate 14 as it was too costly due to the hill. Just look at all the wasted landscaping, water runoff in your neighborhood, hopefully recycled in the morning. Let's fix that first, respectfully. We have Carrie Eckert, Manor 3374C. No to raising fees for a household that has a third person. You are charging us for every little thing. Enough is enough. Stop with all the extra charges for everything. Barbara Montanero, Manor 55101F. Yes, agree, increase. Many residents have grandkids living with them and they do not need a caregiver. No one checks out who is legally here or not. Add $50. I live in a 2-bedroom, 2-bath. No one else lives with me full time. Maybe I should get deceased. It is very hard with the increases for me, food, lights, phone, etc. Linda and Haluk Ozkanek, Manor 3298. We believe that it is right to charge $50 to those manors with an extra person since they are using extra resources. Thank you. Chris or Christine Collins, Manor 3306Q. This is an update on the work of the foundation of Laguna Woods Village. Let me just double check and make sure this is correct. My apologies. We do have, let's see here. That's correct. She gives the same thing every month. Okay, thank you. Madeline Whitman, and I believe that one was already read as well, if I'm not mistaken. So with that, we do have Tina or Jeanne Johnson Manor 2393 2H. I am writing this in regards to lowering percentage for rental properties. I disagree with the strongly and would like to see if that does not happen. There's no reason for it to have to change. I just wanted to voice my opinion. Things should be left the way they are. It's bad enough that it's not higher as it is, but to lower it again is ridiculous. Thank you very much. It should really remain at 30%. Thank you. And we have Michael Pepperman, 2325D. I normally never get involved in politics. All owners agree that.
You read this one already.
I did? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. There are some duplicates in here that we missed. And that is it for the open forum.
Okay, thank you. And thank you to all the residents. I'm really very pleased that so many residents have an opinion on this issue of charging for additional occupant. I'm very pleased to see that the weekly emails are being read and people have responses and thoughts as it relates to those emails. So thank you very much. There'll be an email, just so you know, going out.
President Munchnick, I do apologize. Grant was emphasizing that there is one that we should read that we may have missed. And it's from Christine Collins, Manor 3306Q.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you very much. This is an update on the work of the Foundation of Laguna Woods Village to assist village residents in experiencing temporary financial emergency. The pandemic has reinforced the importance of staying connected. Social isolation can have serious negative effects, affecting both physiological as well as physical health. Infection is not the only risk associated with COVID-19. Given the recent surge of COVID infections, social isolation continues to be a problem, one which the Foundation of Laguna Woods Village is working with our Social Security services to address. Actions include increasing counseling resources to deal with depression, as well as bringing information about new program to the village. One such program seeks to increase internet access for seniors who don't have it. Through the internet, residents can attend Saddleback classes, chat with friends or family via Zoom, enjoy entertainment provided by such streaming services as Netflix, and even attend religious services. The Orange County Office on Aging now offers a program for seniors who cannot afford to purchase a computer or tablet or arrange for internet access. The program provides a free iPad with a data plan for 1 year, as well as training to set up the devices. This program does not require an internet hookup with an internet provider such as West Coast Internet. During the first year, although information for continuing a low-cost basis after the initial year is available, devices are limited and participation is on first-come, first-served basis. To be eligible, an applicant must be 60 plus and live in Orange County, have an annual gross income of less than $75,000, and must have one additional risk factor such as living alone, a health issue, limited mobility, or functional disability. To apply, please contact Orange County Office on Aging at 714-480-6450 or 714-510-2020. If you need assistance to apply, please contact the Village Social Services Office at 949-597-4627. We also welcome your input. If you have any suggestions on how to keep residents connected in the face of the pandemic health risks, please contact the Foundation at 949-268-2246 or foundation@comline.com. For more information about how the Foundation achieves its motto, Neighbors Helping Neighbors, please go to our website at foundationoflagunawoodsvillage.org.
Okay, that's it. That's it, Michaela?
It does look like there is a comment in Zoom. Let's see here. It does say, it's from Joe Silva. It says, it makes sense to change more based on residency. Let's see, more people means more expense, but the same logic applies to other costs such as insurance. Why do manors that have a value of $200,000 pay the same amount as manors that are valued at over $1 million? Why pick and choose as to who has to pay based on cost to the community? If we're trying to be fair, let's be fair to all.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
And
you.
once again, as I was saying, I'm very pleased that so many of the members of our third community have an interest in issues that the board is addressing. And I very much appreciate that you're sending in your comments as you have today, and look forward to having you do that in the future. But because of the number of comments we're getting now in response to emails and things of that nature, we're going to look for a way to group them. So for instance, on this issue, if there's a pro and a con, people interested yes, people interested no, I think what we'll try to do is, instead of reading every one of them, we'll group them, all those that are in favor, all those that are opposed, and read a couple of samples and then list the names of people who have also written in either in support or in opposition. That way, everybody at least will be acknowledged that they submitted an email and that we know what their position is on the particular issue. For tomorrow, just so you know in advance, tomorrow's email actually will list a number of different issues that the board is considering that's going on 28-day notice as of today. And you'll have an opportunity to do the same kind of thing next month in terms of submitting your opinion, pro or con, on a particular issue. So please look for that email tomorrow. Hopefully, you'll read it the same way you've obviously been reading the ones that you've been getting so far. And again, we very much appreciate that. I just want to point out one thing in relation to some of the emails. Some of the folks talked about things that are not in control of Third Mutual. For example, one person referred to the sale of property. We do not own any property that we're able to sell or develop into commercial property. That is all owned by GRF. It's the same thing with the current $100 that's being charged. One speaker said they're already being charged $100. They thought it's a Third Mutual. No, they're not being charged by Third Mutual. They're currently being charged by GRF in that situation. So we have not had, up until this point, any discussion about an additional occupancy. This is the first time we're actually going to be discussing it. Other than that, is there any other directors that would like to say anything in relation to any of the comments?
Yeah. Robert, I just want some clarification on a statement that you made, and hope maybe I'm just the only one that's confused. You said the fees that were charged by GRF, the assessment was charged by GRF, but part of that assessment included GRF assessment and third assessment.
No.
So I think I got confused on your comment.
Currently, United charges a $50 fee for every individual over 2 residing in a manor. That's United. GRF charges a $100 fee for every individual over 2 in both Third and United. Third does not see any of that additional $100 charge that GRF places on an occupant above 2 in a manor. Does that help?
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
Any other directors want to respond or comments, other than to say thank you for everybody? We really much appreciate it. All right, we'll move on the agenda. I guess we're now up to the CEO report.
Thank you. Honorable President, members of the board, I would like to provide a few quick updates before I turn it over to Manuel Gomez, our M&C Director, for a projects update. First, I wanted to mention that Resident Services is now open for walk-in customers. Hours are 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., Monday through Friday. As a reminder, there are many tasks you can accomplish from your home without coming into Resident Services. You can use the resident portal, which is portal.lagunawoodsvillage.com, to process credit card payments, submit service requests, check account balances and print account statements, and update emergency contact information. You may also email your questions or schedule an appointment at residentservices@vmsinc.org. Secondly, I wanted to mention that the Recreation and Special Events Department is going to reopen Clubhouse 6th with volunteers. Hours of operation will be Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Volunteers are sought for a 4 to 8 hour per week commitment. All training will be provided. Interested persons can find the application at lagunawoodsvillage.com and going to Amenities, Recreation, Volunteer Application. Interested persons may also email Recreation at recreation@vmsinc.org if interested in volunteering at Clubhouse 6. And lastly, a trash collection and organic recycling update. CR&R prepared a letter to residents that was included in last Friday's What's Up in the Village e-blast. It addresses the transition challenges the company has faced, including being seriously impacted by COVID in its employee ranks. They've had to use a lot of substitute drivers, which has adversely impacted the service to our community. As their employees get healthier, we expect to see a much better level of service in our community. So if you want to read that letter again, it's available now on our village website. And they also wanted us to remind residents that there will be a bulky item pickup on Saturday, February 19th. Please notify resident services before setting out your bulky items. You place the items near your trash enclosure or in the same location you place your trash bins. And please set out your items no later than 7 a.m. on collection day. And in the future, CR&R, the new trash company, will be moving to zone-based weekly bulky item collection. And there'll be much more information coming on that. And as a final reminder, please contact CR&R directly for all trash-related questions. You can do this by emailing lagunawoods-recycles@crrmail.com or by calling 949-625-6735. And with that, I'll turn it over to Manuel for his update on projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Siobhan, and good morning, members of the board. I appreciate the opportunity to address you this morning and share with you the status of our project update log. Those of you that serve on M&C committee are used to seeing this in a matrix format, and I appreciate the opportunity to share the project update with the entire board this morning. We do have a PowerPoint presentation that will assist me in walking through the list of projects, and we will make the PowerPoint presentation available, hard copies available through the corporate secretary's office, should you wish to have a copy of that. Go to the next slide, please. With the adoption of the 2022 budget, the M&C committee has several projects and programs that we are going to be overseeing. The first listed here is our dry rot program, which has an annual budget of $275,000. As you know, many of our buildings are primarily wood structures susceptible to dry rot from the elements. We address dry rot in various different programs. The majority of it gets taken care of as part of our prior to paint and paint program, but we do have this budget line item for those buildings and areas that fall outside of that cycle and schedule so that we don't neglect any issues that need to be addressed. For this year, we have already identified 3 buildings that will receive some structural removals and replacements of areas that need to be replaced. We also have $110,000 allocated for balcony and breezeway resurfacing. This is a 7.5-year cycle program where we go through and top coat seal the deck surfaces of balconies and breezeways. The intent here is to stay ahead of the dry rot. It also provides for a improved deck surface and improved aesthetics. This year we have 19 separate buildings scheduled for receiving the seal coating on the decks. These buildings are primarily located along Punta Alta and in the cul-de-sac number 340. Next slide, please. The prior to paint program and the exterior paint program are on a 15-year cycle, meaning that every 15 years we try to get to every building to receive a fresh coat of paint. Combined, these programs work hand in hand with each other. So combined, the board has allocated close to $2.5 million for this. The primary areas that we'll be focusing on this year consist of cul-de-sacs 206, 215, and 217. We also, this is preliminary information, we also will be working in cul-de-sacs 201, 202, and 221. That information was given to me this morning as an update to this slide. So you'll see that this is probably one of our larger expenditures for the mutual, but it does provide for ongoing upkeep of all of our structural buildings, residential buildings throughout the community. Next slide, please. The board has allocated $25,000 for foundations program and another $500,000 for building structures. These two programs primarily deal with addressing any signs of distress in footings, typically foundations of the building. If you see some settlement, typically in maybe different parts of the building, these are not programmed proactively. It's a reactive program based on inspections and information received from residents. We will go out, do an inspection. We'll bring in a structural engineer when needed, and then this funding is used to facilitate any repairs that may be needed as part of that inspection. Next slide, please. The termite control program is basically our tenting of our buildings for fumigation to deter any termite activity that's in the building. This funding of almost 175,000 allows us to tent approximately between 20 and 30 buildings a year. This year, we're scheduled to tent 27 buildings, and the funding also provides for hotel accommodations for our residents who are displaced during the structure fumigation. Our roof replacement program is funded at a little over $1 million. This program calls for the inspection of all roofs on a 15-year cycle. We use that inspection data to identify any roofs that may require repair, reaching the end of their service life. These roofs are then scheduled for replacement. And right now we're focusing on the built-up roofs that are then replaced with the new PVC cool roof system. Next slide, please. A couple of programs that get a lot of attention from our residents are the Epoxy waistline remediation program and the copper water line pipe remediation. Both of these programs aim to extend the useful life of both the sewer pipes and the water lines that serve the mutual buildings. An epoxy liner is injected inside of the existing pipes, basically sealing the pipes for any damage or any areas that could potentially leak. The focus tends to be on areas where we've had consistently leakage issues, both in the sewer or water lines. The funding that the board allocated this year will allow us to provide epoxy lining for sewer lines in 4 of the 3-story buildings and 5 of the buildings for water line pipe remediation. Next slide, please. The board also budgets annually an allocation to address rain gutter replacements and repairs. This is on an as-needed basis and is specifically focused on buildings that have existing rain gutters that are either deteriorated due to the elements or have been damaged. You also funded $16,000 for replacement and upgrades of countertops and flooring in the laundry rooms, and $12,000 is allocated for lobby renovations in the Garden Villa buildings. Next slide, please. The board allocated $30,000 for electrical repairs system program. This basically is a contingency fund for repairing any electrical issues that may come up as needed. You also have $25,000 allocated to exterior lighting. This primarily addresses the street lights and walkway light maintenance and repairs. There's a small amount that goes towards new lights based on established policy for any new lighting. And then we have $105,000 for elevator component replacements. This money tends to be used to replace the mechanical equipment in an elevator when we're having continuing issues with needed repairs. This upgrades the equipment that maybe has reached its useful life. Next slide, please. We have a budget of $387,000 for asphalt paving and $46,000 for seal coat applications. Both of these programs are intended to extend the useful life of our street pavements. The slurry seal is applied proactively to seal any cracking that may be appearing in the streets. This helps prevent moisture from getting into the asphalt and deteriorating the subgrade. Then the asphalt paving program comes through based on a rating of streets based on annual inspections. We apply an asphalt overlay to the streets, and this tends to be the more resurfacing that is done to, again, prolong the life of the pavements. And then the last program that we have on the slide here is our Shepherd's Crook replacement program, where we are going through the community, replacing the barbed wire around the perimeter fences. The board has allocated $35,000 for 2022. This is a multi-year program. This will allow us to install approximately, or to replace approximately 300 linear feet of barbed wire with new Shepherd's Crook. The plan for 2022 is to continue the fencing replacement around the vicinity of Gate 11 for 2022. This, if you go to the next slide, I think this completes our presentation this morning. I appreciate the time, and I'm happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
There is an anonymous question.
What? Not yet, hold on.
Okay.
Directors, anybody have questions? Directors? Director Laws?
Yes,
And
Mr.
then
Gomez,
Director Cook.
you mentioned build-up roofs. Can you explain what that is? I'm just not aware of that term. You're on mute if you're speaking.
Manuel, can you hear? You're muted, Manuel.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Yes, thank you. Thank you for that. I don't have an exact description of that. I'm sorry. I don't. I'm looking at our programs here. I'm gonna have to get back to you on that, Director Laws. I don't have an answer for you with me right now.
Okay, no problem. Thanks so much for the presentation. I appreciate it.
Director Cook.
Yes, as far as the exterior paint program, a lot of members have received letters where they get to vote on paint combinations for their buildings. And I've had some contact with non-resident owners asking how they go about seeing these paint samples and that, other than having to drive in to Laguna Woods to, I think there's 2 locations. One of them is Clubhouse 4. And the other thing is that phone number that's on the letter that's sent out about the paint colors combinations for your building. When you call that phone number, this was another complaint, that it not only doesn't answer, but it comes out, mailbox is full, not accepting messages. And they were trying to call to find out if there was some place on our webpage that at least showed a sample of these samples. And we're talking about 12 different combinations. We're not talking about 2 or 3. And they all have these bizarre names where you really don't even know what the color is. It just seems like for the non-resident owners, we should have something on the web page showing examples of these colors so they know what they're voting on. So that's one item. And then the second item is in the copper lines. I believe Director Lewis has mentioned on occasion that when we go into one of the smaller units, the copper lines are relatively small in amount. And if we have a leak that's the responsibility of the HOA, we go into the walls, we tear things apart. Is there even a possibility of looking at letting the owners upgrade their copper piping, and then it would become their responsibility? But when all the walls and everything are torn out to fix the leaks, it would make it much more cost effective if they chose to do that. And then another question about copper pipe leaks, and I don't know if my numbers are completely correct, but in November, we had a situation where there were over 50 leaks in one day. Has any investigation been done to see what caused those leaks? Was it because there was a high pressure surge? Was there a water hammer? Something from the water company where they had problems and we overpressurized the lines? And in respect to that, it seems like we should really consider putting pressure regulating valves on all of our buildings with gauges so that these surges and these pressures are reduced, thereby causing less leaks, causing less cost to the HOA when it's our responsibility when those pipes are in the walls. Just a few thoughts put forward.
Thank you, Director Cook. We will for sure follow up on the voicemail issue for the pink colors, because that should be very easy to rectify. We're not aware that that was taking place. And if the colors are not available online, I think that's also something that we can very easily accommodate. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. I will follow up on the issue of the copper piping, the 3 points that you brought forward there, and we'll get back to you and the board on those matters.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Director Lewis.
As you mentioned, you're going to be replacing some of the flat roofing with PVC, and I think that's a great idea. I'm happy you're doing it. Has any investigation been done on, I know it's not possible on all the roofs, but to replace some of these flat roofs instead of using PVC, to turn them into a pitched roof with twice as long a lifespan as they would, excuse me, have with a flat roof, with far less problems, less leakages, meaning less cost for Third Mutual going forward.
We haven't done that investigation yet. That is something that we certainly could do if that was the direction the board wanted to give us. A lot of those roofs, we want to take into consideration things like architectural features and appearances, but that's certainly something that could be looked into, and be happy to maybe take that to M&C committee and have them start considering that. That might be a good first step there.
Thank you. The only reason I bring this up is because factory-built trusses are much cheaper than building roofs the old ways, having them made to measure and so on. And the assembly is very much faster, and extending the life of a roof and bringing pitched roofs in versus the flat roofs would update the community as far as aesthetics as well. And I would appreciate you looking into that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other board member questions? If not, I want to say that thank you, Manuel, for the presentation. I think it was very informative, and hopefully members who are viewing it have a better understanding of some of the programs and projects that are underway and the kind of dollars that are associated with it. For all the members who are watching, know that the next meeting of the third M&C is Monday, March 7th, 1:30 to 3:30 here in the boardroom. And if you want more information about that, I suggest that you tune in or come in to the meeting, and you'll be able to ask questions and learn about what's going on with M&C for Third Mutual. So thank you, Manuel, appreciate it. Manuel attends that meeting, by the way, with us on Monday, March 7th. All righty, anything else, CEO Foster, in terms of it?
No, thank you.
All righty, thank you very much. We'll now move to the consent calendar. Item 11, all matters listed under the consent calendar are recommended for action by committees and will be enacted by the board by one motion. In the event an item is removed from the consent calendar by members of the board, such items shall be subject to further discussion and action by the board. We have on here three items. One of them is from the financial group. The second and third have to do, the second has to do with landscaping, and the third has to do with liens. So can I get a motion to approve the consent calendar? I see Mark Laws moves to approve the consent calendar. I see Director Engdahl seconds the motion. All right. Any discussion? Director Lewis, your hand is up.
Yes, I just need to say that I need to recuse myself or abstain from voting on the items that I was not in attendance on those meetings for, which would be item 11C for sure. And that's all I have to say.
Okay, all righty. So Director Lewis requests to be listed as abstaining from voting on the consent calendar. It's because it's an all or nothing at this point, Director Lewis. So, because it's all moved as a single. So you'll just abstain from the consent calendar if that's okay. All righty. Any other questions or discussion regarding the consent calendar? Hearing none, then we'll assume that the consent calendar as presented is approved with Director Lewis abstaining in regards to the consent calendar. Okay. Unfinished business. 12A, entertain a motion to approve a revised resolution for a stepping stone policy and guidelines. Director Jarrett, you want to read the resolution, please?
Okay, I read this resolution into the record last meeting. It was approved conditionally upon the receipt of the updated diagram and added verbiage for guidelines for use of the diagram, all of which has been completed. So we need a motion to approve this stepping stone policy.
Okay. Can I get a motion to approve? I see Director McCary moves. Can I get a second? I see Director Rains-Hosak seconds. Is there any discussion regarding the stepping stone policy? Director Laws.
Thank you, Director Jarrett, for getting these changes made. I appreciate it. On the picture, the sample sketch, there's a big letter A. I'm on page 12 of 12. A in the middle of the sketch. I just was curious as to if you knew what that was.
Can you tell us what page you're on, please?
12 of 12.
I can't tell you what that is.
I don't think it's relevant. I just don't want it to confuse somebody somewhere
I
along
will
the
check.
line.
I will check into
Thanks.
that.
Let me ask this question. Director Laws, you were the one who, this is your drawing, correct?
But it didn't have a big A in it. But
Okay,
yes, it's
no,
my drawing.
but it's your drawing.
Yes.
So since it's your drawing, and you don't understand the A, then let's have the A just removed.
That'd be perfect.
Is that acceptable?
That'd be fine.
So it goes back to your original drawing. Okay, all right. Then, with that in mind, is there any other discussion regarding the stepping stone policy? Hearing none, I will then go ahead and assume that this is approved by consent unless I hear otherwise. Stepping stone policy is now formally approved. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is, for your consideration, the motion to introduce lease authorization renewal. Director Jarrett.
Okay, one moment, please. I have my tabs missing. I have a missing tab. Hold on.
And this will address one of our earlier member comments who specifically asked about could we simplify the lease authorization for people? This is now going to hopefully address that issue for that member.
Okay, the last meeting, I read this resolution, and at this point, I want to say the staff recommends amending the process and documents pertinent to the annual renewal of lease authorization applications, and we're ready for a motion.
Can I get a motion to approve the lease authorization renewal? I see Director McCary moves. I see Director Wayne seconds. Is there any discussion about this? The whole, Director Laws.
Yeah, when I look at these processes, new process to approve, I want to help ensure that they're not confusing for those involved, because with confusion comes frustration and potential additional time and cost. While I'm all for making things easier for the landlords, I'm not convinced that the processes are going to support making it easier without a whole lot of confusion. I've asked on a couple of occasions to get some details. Those details have not been provided to me. So just want to let you know that I'll be voting no on this. Thank you.
Okay. I see that Pamela Bashline is with us in the audience. Ms. Bashline, would you be interested in or available to address any of Director Law's questions or comments?
Yes.
Director Laws, do you have?
Well, I mean, specifically, I had asked for what information is being sent to the landlords so that they know which version of the process to fill out. All that I see is attachment 0, and which is looks like an email with links to it. So click here to get the instructions. Well, I can't do that with this hard copy, so I don't see those instructions. An example of some confusion is Exhibit C, which is part of the original main process for lease, and it mentions that the full lease application, the many pages, is required for all new leases, renewals, and extensions. So if it says it's required for renewals, there's some confusion there. So it's just, those are the types of things that I'm concerned with. So again, all for making things easier, but if it's going to cause more confusion, I'd rather vote no and do it right, and then readdress it later. Thank you.
Good morning. With respect to page 5 and 6 of this item, these are the emails that are sent to landlords and lessees 60 days before the lease renewal period and 30 days before the lease renewal if they haven't already taken care of that business. So this was provided in last month's board package, and it's this. If you want me to provide what this link takes you to, I'm happy to do that. But I think your question was, how do we notify landlords and tenants as to the status of their lease authorization?
So actually, the instructions were what I wanted. Where, if you were to click here, where would you go, and what would those instructions be? So that would be specifically what I'm interested in. You won't be able to give those to me before I vote. So again, we'll vote no. You mentioned that this goes out by email, so that's the only way it goes out, correct?
That's correct.
So nothing gets mailed?
We used to mail out letters. That was prior to the malware attack. The amount of postage, toner, paper, etc., that was involved in that process, this was one of the efficiencies that came into play to make sure that we got the word out, even though our word is a courtesy notice. People who are running a business here, essentially, i.e. having rental units, theoretically would be marking their own calendars as to when this needs to be accomplished on an annual basis. With respect to your second question about the the full application process. We did not make any changes in that, your reference to renewals, new, et cetera, pending the board's action on this more streamlined version, which is 3 pages of information, primarily updating contact information, than the more lengthy full application process that requires multiple forms.
Thank
So I
you.
hope that helps.
It helps. Perhaps email for this new process isn't the way to go, but maybe something mailed to let landlords know once it's done, and maybe that was part of the plan, although I don't know. So, so thank you for your replies. I appreciate it.
Surely.
Thanks.
Director Lewis, question?
Yes, on page 17 of 44 under the assignment of rent, what happens when the landlord and the person leasing enters into a prepay arrangement, whether it's quarterly, semi-annually, or even annually, and there is no monthly payment? What do you do in cases like that?
Is that a question for me,
There is no monthly.
Director Lewis?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Thank you. What would you do under the section C, assignment of rents, when there is no monthly rent to assign when it's already prepaid for a year or 6 months? Is there anything you do other than what's written here?
I don't believe we've had that situation arise. So the assignments of rents would occur if a member fails to pay the monthly assessment and has a lessee in his unit. We would be reaching out to the landlord and lessee, but essentially telling the lessee to make his payments directly to Laguna Woods Village. And when the arrearage was balanced out, then he could start making his payments to the landlord again.
Yeah, the reason I asked this, in the community I was in prior, we had a handful of prepays that were significant. Some were 6 months, some were an entire year. Both assessments and payments to their landlords to get significant discounts. And that's what I was asking. If you reach out to someone that's already paid rent, it's a moot point. It still falls back onto the owner. And I was wondering if you go through a normal recourse of liens and so on, if this would be the case.
Thank you for your question. I do think maybe somebody from the accounting division would be able to answer their experience, but again, I have not had anyone brought to my attention that has prepaid and would have been sent this letter, and we would have had difficulty collecting that assignment of rents.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Hearing none, we have a motion on the floor to approve the lease authorization renewal for people in good standing. At this point, we'll take a vote. Unless I hear otherwise, Director Laws has indicated he votes no. Is there anybody else who, Director Lewis, you vote no?
Yes, because on one other item, I'm sorry, I forgot. On page 32 of 44, you need to enter the words optional or remove Social Security number, because the law provides people with, it's unnecessary for a renter applying for any place to provide their Social Security number. It's just an optional thing, and you need to have the words optional in there just to comply, and let the people know that they are not required to give away their Social Security number. And that's on page 32 of 44.
Okay. Director Cook?
Yes, I just want to give some historical reference to this. And what's happened is the pendulum keeps swinging on this. Originally, when I first moved here, after 5 years of living here and then leasing our property out, we got a 5-year lease for our tenant. They had to do all the initial paperwork, that was fine. But then every year after that, if nothing changed, all we had to do was pay an administrative fee of $10. Somewhere between then, excuse me, and now, we've started making landlords fill out all the paperwork again. Each year, charging the $160 or whatever it was before. And now we're looking at trying to simplify it like it used to be, but we're charging, what is it, $170 for the initial, which is fine. But to charge $110 each year if you have a multiple year lease or you're renewing the lease annually when there are no changes, to me is a cost well above what it should be. So I'll be voting no on it also.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments? Well, let's go ahead then, and since we have such a division of opinion, let's go ahead and do a show of hands for this. All those who are in favor of the motion as presented, please raise a hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, 5 in favor. Opposed? 1, 2, 3. 3 opposed. And 1 abstention. So the motion passes 5, 3, and 1 abstention. Okay? Thank you. All right, next item on the agenda, new business. Entertain a motion to introduce a revised alteration fee schedule. This goes on 28 days. Would you, Director Jarrett, please read the motion?
Yes, I have to read the resolution on this one.
Yes, please read it.
Okay. This, just a moment, please.
Your microphone.
Thank you. All right. The Third Architectural Controls and Standard Committee recommends the approval of the revision of fees as proposed within this resolution for the new revised alteration fee schedule dated November 23rd, 2021. The fees, the financial analysis was done, and it indicates the changes to certain current fees and charges of the alteration fee schedule with an estimated total increase of $82,908 in additional revenue. This total is due to increases in the following categories. Alteration fee schedule fee will be increased to $70. The new basic variance fee will be increased to $380. The new complex variance fee will be increased to $662. The unauthorized alteration fee was increased to $350. The permit fee valuation shall be increased by 40% for each valuation of escalation. The resale inspection fees increased by $100. The resolution reads as follows. Whereas the alteration and variance requests require significant staff time for proper processing, including research, report preparation, and then presentation to the appropriate committee and then the board. And whereas in order to offset a portion of the administrative costs associated with processing variance requests, which is often followed by multiple resubmittals and can be followed by an appeal to the board as mandated in accordance with Resolution 03-13105. And whereas the following resolutions are approved, the alteration fee schedule is revised to $70, and 2, the new basic variance fee will be $380, and 3, the new complex variance fee will be $662, and the alteration fee will be increased to $350, and the permit fee valuation shall be increased by 40%, and the resale fees will increase to the total amount of $215 for the first and second inspection fees. Whereas the new alteration fee schedule better aligns the fees with the administrative time it takes to process each task, and now therefore be it resolved, February 15th, 2022, to partially offset administrative costs associated with processing alteration and variance requests, the Board of Directors of this corporation hereby revise the alteration and inspection fees as attached to the official minutes of this meeting. The new alteration fee schedule will be adopted. And resolved further, in the event that a member requires an after-the-fact ATF, mutual consent for work completed without prior appropriate authorization, the following would apply as appropriate to the nature of the improvement work, defined as the member being responsible for a variance fee if the work required variance approval, an ATF mutual consent fee due to the work not having been applied for and permitted by manner alterations in advance of completion, a mutual consent fee totaling the cost of an appropriate mutual consent fee if the work had been properly approved, a demolition fee totaling the cost of the appropriate demolition fee if the work had been properly approved, and resolve further that resolution 0317120 adopted October 20, 2017 is hereby superseded and canceled. And resolve further that the officers and agents of this corporation are hereby authorized on behalf of the corporation to carry out the resolution.
Okay, this is going on 28 days, but we'll open it up for discussion and questions. We have Robbie Donkost available to us to answer any questions related to this. Director Lewis, I see your hand.
Yes, I was looking through, and where do normal water heater replacements fall in this? They're not listed anywhere. You have on attachment 4, you have some things that don't require anything, changes out of refrigerator, microwave, stove, oven, dishwasher. You talk about AC and heat pumps, like for like is fine, but no discussion on just changing out, not relocation, but just changing out a water heater. Where would that fall in this?
Robbie Donkost, are you available to answer that question?
I am, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to the members of the third board, residents, and staff. The water heater replacement is a totally separate issue from the alterations revised fee schedule for new additions and variances regarding work in and around the manors themselves. That, what you're describing, Mr. Lewis, is a separate maintenance issue that is not part of this fee schedule at all.
Okay, so where would the average individual find that on the website? Where to go? If do they? I know they need a city permit, but do they need some kind of permit through alterations or MNC?
Well, if you want just a replacement or to request a replacement of an unaltered water heater, that's totally separate from you wanting to have your water heater replaced as an alteration. If it is as an alteration, it would be simply in accordance with the fee schedule, and that would be the $70 alteration processing fee as a minimum. If that work exceeded $750, it would be $70. If that work is between $751 to $2,000, that fee would increase another $7, which would then be $77 according with, that would be page 6 of 12. I'm showing you that location on the permit fee legend.
Let me interrupt you a second,
Okay.
Robbie. I'm not sure that I'm hearing a correct response to Director Lewis's question. Director Lewis, I think, and please correct me, Director Lewis, if I'm wrong. I think Director Lewis is asking if a person currently has a hot water heater and they want to just replace in the exact same location that hot water heater, where do they go What do they have to do? Because it's not included in any of this information. Is that correct, Director Lewis?
Yes, that's correct. I mean, do you avoid alterations, just go directly to the city? Do you go to M&C? Because it's not mentioned anywhere. I mean, you mentioned refrigerators, microwaves, stoves, ovens, and dishwashers, and so on. If there's nothing for you to do with just a direct like-for-like water heater replacement, shouldn't that be listed as well? That's just as a common appliance, as appliances as far as change-outs go.
But it needs a city permit. I think that's the distinction, is that the items that are on this alteration list on page 10 of 12, attachment 4, are alterations that don't need a city permit. But I think the hot water heater needs a city permit. Is that correct?
Yeah, I believe you're correct. I believe you're correct. But I think it should be mentioned somewhere that no alterations permit should be made to go directly to the city or whatever the procedure happens to be, just to give clarification to the ownership, because this is a common item.
And if I may assist, that answer is found on the permit alteration fee based on valuation by alphabetical order, water heater, relocation, or replacement. It doesn't say replacement, but yes, it requires a city permit. What triggers the city to issue you a permit would be the issuance of a mutual consent. So if your water heater is not already an alteration, and you just want to replace it as an alteration, it would be this fee schedule, which would indicate a $70 mutual consent fee to replace it if it's less than $750, or graduated to a $108 fee if it is $751 to $2,000, and that would include your water heater replacement.
Let me ask this question.
Yeah, I'm just thinking
I'm going to jump ahead of you, Director Lewis. Let me ask this question. Why are we charging anything for a like-for-like replacement of water heater?
Well, we don't have a like-for-like component within Third. United did adopt a like-for-like policy, which is simply a notification that allows them to do so. There is no like-for-like policy in Third.
But if I'm looking at attachment on page 4, third mutual alterations without a mutual consent, floor replacement, paint, the ones that Director Lewis was referring to, sink toilet replacement, appliance change out, refrigerator, microwave, those are considered like for like, are they not?
Those are.
So then why isn't a water heater on a replacement on this list that therefore does not require a mutual consent? And the statement that just says, but does require a city permit.
And the only way to obtain a city permit is to have a mutual consent. So those items that do require a city permit because it involves plumbing that needs to be inspected for code by the city has to be a mutual consent issued as well.
Director Lewis, the floor is yours. I just think it needs to be made a little bit clearer on this particular item especially, since it seems to be, when people first look at the document online, it says water heater relocation. And then I would think most people would stop reading right there, and then become confused, and may go to your office, may call your office, may email your office. I think and wasting time all the way around. And I'm hoping that, as President Munchak had mentioned, that perhaps we can get a like-for-like policy and just get a simple approval so people can go to the city since the city is going to be the one to do all the inspection, and just streamline this common process that happens every 10 years to everybody, roughly. So that's my comment. I'm not sure how to handle this. I think it needs to be clarified in some way.
Go ahead, sir. Go ahead, Robbie.
If I make one final comment to this, please, is that this was an issue that was brought up by the city on the United like-for-like process, whereby the city said, we have no other means to issue permits on those items that involve code. If someone comes to us, if a resident comes to us or a contractor wanting a permit, they required that manor alterations issue an approval prior to the resident or the contractor coming to the city. That in itself forced us to take out of any type of like-for-like modification that involved a plumbing change or an electrical change out of a quote like-for-like replacement. So the items that we show as an alteration without a mutual consent, those are done without a plumbing or an electrical revision and can be done very easily without a mutual consent as maintenance. That's why this water heater issue is a little more complicated, involving a city permit process.
So then on page, let me ask this question. On page 6 of 12 and 7 of 12, if under water heater, it said water heater, the first word would be replacement, because most people are going to be doing replacement. And then it said or relocation. If we put that there, and then in the text part of it where we have relocation, we put replacement first. Because my perception is most people are just replacing a water heater, not relocating it. Would that address the issue, Director Lewis?
Yeah, any amount of clarity would help in this issue. Like I said, if you put relocation first, the people that are going to just replace stop reading and move on and become confused and have no direction. And this will just waste time for the alterations department and waste time with the city and so on. So anything we can do to increase clarity would be the best way to go.
So putting the word replacement or relocation would help address at least some of that. Okay?
I think so.
All right. Anything else? Director Cook, you look like you're unmuting. Go ahead, Director Cook.
Okay, I have no real problem with the fee structures mentioned in here. What I do have a problem with, and I kind of had an epiphany, was that we have too many things that we require variances for. Many of these things can be handled in the plan check, plan review, the permit cost. And my opinion is we should set policy as policymakers. And the only things that should be requiring a variance, because it's a misnomer here for what a variance is compared to what a normal city is. So my opinion is we should only need variances for things that can be seen from the outside, things that are going to be done in the exclusive use common area or in the common area. And even within those areas, the exclusive use common area, that the things that would not need variance would be attachment 3, the list of standard alterations. So basically, if you see it from the outside, if it's in the exclusive use common area and not part of the standard of alterations, those are the only things that we should require variance. All the other can be handled in plan review by Laguna Woods and plan check by Laguna Woods City, and structural can all be handled with structural engineering calculations being required again in another part of the process. None of these things that we deal with as far as structural are ever brought up as variances in city permitting process. We just did it in the shotgun approach because one time, a long time ago, some contractor didn't do his engineering of replacing a beam, and it's making it so complicated. It spends so many staff hours. It costs so much money for both the staff and the members. So as policy, I think we need to change what we require variances for, because most of it can be handled in the other process. That's just my opinion.
Director Robbie Donkoss, do you want to, any thoughts on that?
Yes, sir. Certainly, we agree with Director Cook's summary of trying to move the variance process more into a standard staff review and conformance guideline. And we are working to present information in the ACSC that can be evaluated, because it is a complex issue relative to who controls which component of those things and how much latitude staff can be given regarding that modification. I would offer to you that this process of reviewing the fee schedule is a step in the right direction, in that we do clarify those items that are currently can be done with over-the-counter or non-permittable, required permittable mutual consents. And this gets us to a point of the additional services that staff is providing as of third quarter of 2021. It brings an equality to those additional services relative to the fee schedule that is now proposed in this item to the board. And we can certainly commit to working towards more of an equitable situation relative to reducing variances and handling it more at a staff level in the future.
Director Cook.
Thank you so much for that. I appreciate it, and I hope we move in that direction, because it'll, like I said, it'll simplify, it will cut costs, and it will be more conducive to members actually improving their units and taking away some of the responsibility of the HOA once they have improved their units. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Director Laws.
I have three questions. First of all, page 5 of 12, which is attachment 1, the top of that talks about the resale inspection and report fee increase, and it mentions that the total new resale inspection report is going to cost $220. Is that correct, or is it $215? So, which is what the resolution mentions.
Yeah, there is a...
It does look like the top of page 5 is a bit messed up.
Yeah, the resolution that was read, Robbie, says specifically the resale fees will increase to a total amount of $215 for the first and second inspection fees. And as Director Laws points out on page 5 of 12, it says that the total new resale inspection report would be $220. So I guess Mr. Director Laws is asking, which is it, 220 or 215? Which needs to be corrected, the resolution or page 5 of 12? You see where we're looking?
We would want to adhere to the resolution, though certainly, and I do see the difference that is being raised, at this point. I did not realize this was a conflict prior to this report being offered to the board and to the ACSC.
So 215 is the final figure.
Yes, sir.
Okay, second question,
That's what
Director
I thought.
Laws?
Yes, on attachment 4, there's an acronym, ACM. What does that stand for?
ACM.
ACM is asbestos-containing materials.
Okay. Maybe that could be put down at the bottom for those lay people like me who would have no idea. Yeah. And then the third was these rates, these new fees were based upon bill rates of 2021. Since we're now in 2022, should we be thinking about different rates? If we're going to go forward with this, are we going to be behind from the get-go? And those two 2021 billing rates I'm referring to are mentioned on page 4 of 12 in the variance fee increase, when it talks about the hours times the rate.
I guess the question is, Robbie, and it's a legitimate one, those figures that you give, where are we going forward? Are those going to be the figures for the next X number of years? Or how does that impact in terms of cost next year and the year after, since we're not building in any percent of increase as we move forward? So if we're interested in covering costs, how often will we have to revisit this to adjust for cost changes?
Well, we had set this increase up in a balance type of situation whereby we did not incorporate future increases. This increase rate is made from a point of last increase, which was established at 2017, and we were trying to strike a balance of, one, attempting to bring us closer to making the mutual whole for the increase of services, which would reduce processing time, get us to a higher service level, but was not to take us to a point that would project out 5 years or 10 years in the future. We thought that would be a little more controversial in getting this particular fee increase. So to answer your question, this basically brings us current. I think it would be critical for us to find out where we are at next budget allocation and see if what these projections bring us actually get us to those points. We actually realize what these fee increases are so that we have a more educated presentation that we could bring back to the ACSC and the board maybe a year or two from now.
Let me ask this question. If we do what Director Cook is asking, and we remove more and more of these from this process and make it over-the-counter mutual consent forms, we won't be causing staff, we'll be reducing staff time, et cetera, as it relates to these items. So we'll be able maybe to keep these costs for as they are for a longer period of time.
Agree with you 100%. And the other factor to this is we are factoring in the new software upgrade that is to occur, which is very expensive to the mutual. And we're thinking that we will be able to realize some efficiencies regarding going more to a digital process. So what we contemplated here was, let's not foresee an additional cost increase where we believe there's going to be a cost savings as well. So in our opinion, it is better to present this in a fashion of reasonability based upon the facts that we have and some consideration for equality of some increase, but yet some cost savings.
So let me
and that's why we arrived at these numbers.
So let me take it the other direction. If we institute the new ERP program and we do the things that Director Cook is asking, and we create greater efficiencies, we may be able to actually come back next year and talk about a possible reduction in this fee.
I would say yes, of course. I would caution the board as to a reduction only because there are services that have to be considered relative to what we can and can't do with the workload. For instance, in the past year, we've seen a plus 15% rise in resales. We've absorbed that increase in workload with the current staff that we have, which was basically increased the third quarter of last year. So we took on that burden. Staff has worked extra hard, and we've met that demand. When we look at attrition of staff and re-education of people, it all factors in. So I just caution us throwing out something that says, well, maybe we'll have a reduction. If we do, we can certainly bring that back to you for consideration.
Director Cook.
Yeah, as far as reduction, I don't have a problem when it's multiple variances and charging the larger amount, or when it's lesser variances and charging a lesser amount. But it would all be reduced if we reduced the amount of things that required a variance. There's still going to be occasions where somebody wants to do something or build something or do something outside where it's multiple, and it's going to cost the $662 for the variance. But instead of having 100 of these, we may cut it down to 10. And so as far as the cost per unit of this, I don't have a problem with. I just want to reduce overall the amount that has to be done.
That's what I was suggesting, Director Cook. Okay. Director, this is, first of all, this is on 28-day notice, just so you know. I mean, we'll come back and go ahead, Director Laws.
Just one point of clarification. The new system isn't costing this mutual anything, right? It's being paid for.
Not directly.
Not directly.
Not
Yes,
directly.
not directly, but just a comment
As
that
the
it was
A-
going
but
to be
as the-
very expensive for the mutual.
As the
I think.
GRF fees go up, our share of the cost of GRF goes up.
I think if you talk with the treasurer of GRF, he would say that this will have no impact on even GRF fees, but fair enough. Regarding the resales you just brought up, Mr. Doncost, this page 5 of 12 shows that the actual effort is closer to $331 of effort for a resale inspection, yet we're only asking to raise that to $215. Am I reading this correctly?
Yes, sir.
So why wouldn't we increase the resale inspection fee more? Maybe I'm looking at that inappropriately, but if somebody's selling a unit, it may be easier for them to absorb a slightly larger fee versus us trying to keep that down and potentially raising other fees for residents.
Well, what has been brought up in the past was that there is already a fee for manor alterations to exist. There's already an assessment cost for that. These costs also add the additional customer service, volume of work that we can provide to the mutual. And so it's in addition to fees that are already being charged to the mutual as part of the assessment. We're only trying to cover that gap. So yeah, there is some disparity with some of the components, but we believe in all fairness that we can live with this fee schedule currently as we're representing to the board, and we would like the opportunity to see where we are with these modest increases before we just say, this is the cost for this fee regardless of the current assessment, and just do this on an interim basis so that we have more information.
Okay.
Okay.
All righty. Moving along, that takes care of the motion to revise alteration fee. That goes on 28 days. We now have entertain a motion to introduce a contract violation policy. Point it out, so she's going to read it.
Oh, this is the alteration variance process, the one we just did. It has the date of February 15th. And it's
Okay, it was just pointed out to me that the alteration variance policy on page 11 of 12 says that now therefore be it resolved February 15th, 2022. That's not correct. It's going to be March 15th, 2022. No, March and February are the same dates.
Right.
So that on page 11 of 12, when Secretary Jarrett read the resolution, it did state in the resolution February 15th, 2022, and instead that should be under the first now therefore be it resolved March 15th, 2022. Okay?
Thanks.
That's a correction. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, would you read the resolution now related to contractor violation policy, please? This is
Okay.
also going to go on 28 days.
All right. Just a second, please. Okay. The recommendation for this contractor violation policy is the third Laguna Woods Mutual Architectural Control and Standards Committee recommends the third mutual board adopt the proposed contractor violation policy to provide additional protections to members and mutual property as a result of the members hiring contractors that continue to violate mutual construction rules and regulations. The resolution reads as such: whereas the purpose of the contractor violation policy is to enact a unilateral and unambiguous matrix of violations and potential ban for contractors who violate current mutual rules and obligations or exceed the scope of approval for a project. And whereas this pending resolution would make the contractor violation policy permanent and provide a clear template for invoking penalties inclusive of a temporary or potentially permanent suspension from work within Laguna Woods Village with the allowance for approved timeline extensions. And whereas the third ACSC, that's the Architectural Control Committee and Manor Alterations, agree that the contractor violation policy will be effective and both recommend the approval by the board. Now therefore be it resolved, the third mutual board hereby approve the contractor violation policy as attached to these minutes, and resolve further that the officers and agents of this corporation are hereby authorized on behalf of the corporation to carry out the purpose of this resolution. And we need...
Okay, any comments related to this policy that's going on 28 days? Director Laws.
Yeah, so just a kind of a question for my committee members on this. Back in November, I provided all of you with a list of questions and comments that I had. I see that none of them are in this document, but nobody told me that they looked at them and didn't agree with them. So did they get addressed? So I put in everybody's inbox my comments about this contractor violation process.
I don't remember ever seeing them.
Okay, all right, excellent. So I'll put that, I mean, I did it personally, so they were there, but somebody else may have taken them. So good, glad to hear that. One of the key points that I have on this is attachment A, page 7 of 16, item number 5. Member hereby consents and grants the mutual MA in maintenance and construction and their representatives a right of property entry at any time. I brought this up back in November. I know Mr. Donkosh, you said, hey, you know, we aren't talking about coming in and doing it at 2 a.m. Even so, I think there needs to be some parameters around this. Otherwise, it's just too open for me to be able to vote for it. But that is one of the things that I had highlighted, so I will photocopy this and provide it to you again. And thank you.
Okay.
Mark? Hey, look familiar? It does. I got mine. Okay.
I've never,
Did you answer?
It was supposed to go to the board.
I never saw, I don't remember ever
I don't
seeing it.
remember seeing it either.
No problem.
Yeah. All right.
It only went to the board.
Director Lewis.
Yes, I was wondering what the reasoning would be on contractors not working on observed holidays that are only by VMS, the banks, and the government, like President's Day being observed on Monday. Every other business is open. Why would contractors be restricted working on those particular days? I can understand Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, and so on, things like that. But the day after Thanksgiving is one of the busiest business days in the world, or in this country. Why wouldn't people be allowed to work when everyone else, except for VMS, the banks, and the government isn't?
Robbie.
That would be on page 8 of 16.
Robbie, you want to address that?
You're muted. You're muted.
That's a good question. The reason is that things happen during construction. Could be demolition, where there's a possibility of someone doing work without proper notification, and one of the residents wants to contact Manor Alterations and let us know that there's an issue, or security is notified because they're on site all the time, 24/7, and there is no one accessible in Manor Alterations. If the board and the members have no issue with work going on in a manor, and there isn't someone in Manor Alterations that could respond to that on an emergency basis, we have no issue expanding those hours. That's simply the reason for that insertion of pulling out those days by which VMS considers them employee holidays. That's the only reason.
Okay.
Okay. Any other comments or anything before we place this on 28 days? Director Laws, if you would give me a copy of that material to be able to look at before the 28 days are up, I'd be happy to do that. All right? All right, that goes on 28 days. We now move to entertain a motion to introduce a revision to the water heater enclosure disposition. This is something that had previously been on 28 days, was pulled back, went back to committee, and is now back in front of you. Director Jarrett, if you would read the resolution related to the water heater enclosure disposition.
All right, what I would like to say is I read this resolution into the record last month. It was conditionally approved to move forward if the wording was changed on line number 3 from shall to may, and additional verbiage for clarification was added. The correct wording has been changed. We needed a motion to approve this resolution with changes and put it on a 28-day. The changes have been made.
The changes have been made.
Yes.
Okay, so then it goes out on 28 days. Director Lewis.
Yes, on page 6 of 26, at the bottom of, in red, it was added about landscaping. Can we make it a little simpler? Because it looks like the member is going to make arrangements with landscaping to conform or reroute the sprinkler system and whatnot. And then it looks like the member is going to be responsible again to contact Manor Alterations after landscaping does their job. And I would submit that the email to the homeowner and could be CC'd to Manor Alterations to streamline the process, to let Manor Alterations know at the same time from landscaping that they've done their job. everybody could get notified at once, rather than going back and forth and back and forth. So everybody's on the same page with that particular item. That way that you don't have to rely on the homeowner to provide verification. It can come directly from landscaping that all the work has been done to satisfy the needs of this particular operation.
So what you're suggesting is that once landscaping, and I'm looking at 6.0 landscaping 6.1, that the last sentence says, verification of the sprinkler system conformity to this paragraph shall be made in writing to manner alterations. What you're suggesting is, once landscaping completes the sprinkler system conformity, they will inform manner alterations.
Yes, and they can do
Is
the
that what
same
you,
thing.
is that would simplify it and make it easier? All
Yes,
right.
yes.
So the modification then would be to 6.0 landscaping, 6.1, the last sentence, once landscaping completes the sprinkler system conformity to this paragraph, landscaping shall notify manner alterations of such.
Yes, and then one other quick question, just above that in 4.3, are there any other type of conduits besides rigid and flexible? Just out of curiosity, why that's there.
Robbie, you want to address that? It's out of my area of expertise, sir.
You know, there are city codes that will allow other types of electrical connections, but it is to the mutual's advantage that rigid or flexible conduit, which is a metallic type enclosure, be used for these types of locations. It's exposed to the exterior, and it's not really an expensive component.
I'm not getting at the point where, excuse me, where they should not use conduit. I was just wondering if there's any other type aside from flexible or rigid, and why those two words are in there if there are no other types. That's all. And just leave the word conduit. It doesn't really matter, but I was just curious, since the words rigid or flexible conduit were in there, was there some other type, perforated conduit or?
Yeah, I think it's done just as a clarification, not only to the member, but to the contractor that, hey, this has got to be in rigid or flexible conduit. That's all.
Okay, all right.
All right.
But yeah, there's direct burial of wire that's used, but this is a more permanent solution to those other types, and it eliminates all possibilities of someone coming in and wanting to do their own version of something that is not as durable. That's all.
I'm all for conduit. Don't get me wrong. I'm all for the conduit.
Director Cook. Then Director Laws.
Basically, you can't use Romex.
Okay. Director Laws.
Yes, can Mr. Doncos please clarify how the design revision will be funded? I mean, is this budgeted?
Well, this design revision is actually for let me pull up closer, is primarily the member's responsibility because of the rot and because of the lack of landscaping that we have currently with the standard, which is, we have wood, and that wood really needs to be pressure treated for longevity. And this just lists a more durable enclosure. What we are doing as part of this is that there is currently a moratorium on providing these enclosures in common area. There's really very limited ways where these can be made attractive, and it's in the mutual's interest to really move away from allowing these in common area and moving towards getting rid of these components in the future. So this water heater enclosure policy has other ramifications to it as well.
Sorry, I guess my question wasn't clear. I'm looking at the financial analysis on page 4 of 26. Funding for the redesign and plan check fee is coming out of some budget account.
Please make sure your microphone is on.
I'm so sorry. I'm looking at financial analysis, page 4 of 26. Funding for the redesign and plan check fee for this new drawing is coming out of some outside services budget. Is that, we have for amount of $10,000. We have $10,000 sitting there that wasn't allocated to something else?
Yes, we do. We had that allowance within the 2022 budget. So we can make that accommodation. And what's needed will be the redraft of the drawings that depict this particular issue and process that through the building department so that the members individually don't need to pay any additional services time after time again relative to processing that permit through in that manner.
Great, thank you.
Okay, that goes on 28 days. We'll now move to the last item that'll go on 28 days, and to entertain a motion to introduce the additional occupancy fee, which clearly many members in our community had opinions on. So if you would please read the resolution, that will go on 28 days.
Okay. The additional occupancy fee. Whereas Third Laguna Hills Mutual is authorized to manage, operate, and maintain housing at Laguna Ridge Village. Whereas Third acknowledges its pro forma budget is based upon 2 occupants per household. And whereas Third recognizes a select number of households are compromised of more than 2 occupants per household. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the Board of Directors established a third-person fee for non-lessee occupants of, we'll put the date in there later. Resolved further, Third establishes a third-person fee to include live-in caregivers of X dollars per month. Resolved further that the officers and agents of the corporation are hereby authorized on behalf of the corporation to carry out this resolution. I think it's going to be March 15th of 2022.
It should be March 15th. I think
Yes.
there's a slight correction to this. It is under now, therefore be it resolved, the Board of Directors establishes an occupancy fee for each person above 2. So if there's a 4th person, there'd be an additional charge for that 4th person. The same thing with further resolved, Third establishes an occupancy fee to include live-in caregivers. Okay, so I think we're talking, because the caregiver could be the 4th person, the caregiver could be the 3rd person.
Right.
I think we need to just clarify in here that the intent is that for each individual above 2, the occupancy fee, additional occupancy fee be charged. Is that the understanding of everybody else?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Is there anything else related to this that's up for discussion at this point? Director Laws.
Yes, on reading the financial analysis, it mentions the potential income gained. It also has the very last sentence says, staff does not estimate any additional cost would be necessary to administer charges for the 23 caregivers exceeding 2. How about for the 73 units? Are there any administrative charges to support this at all?
The answer is no. There's no additional administrative
Yes, she
charges.
already told us that.
In discussion with Pamela Bashline at the time, there's no additional cost to us to implement this.
She mentioned that, I just want, but at the committee, I'd asked that it be put in the financial analysis, so since it wasn't, I just wanted to bring it up so that all the other board members understood.
The answer is you are correct.
Very good.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Director Rainsos?
Yeah, I just, in listening to the comments, both pro and con, it seemed that many of the people who were concerned about charging for a third person may not realize all that is included in our monthly assessment fee and all that we cover. Some people did mention water, there's parking, these have nothing to do with GRF facilities. They've got to do with wear and tear, if you will, and some of the fees we cover. And I'm just curious, do we have prominently anywhere those things that our monthly assessment includes? Where people could easily see it. Because what we do in this community, from my experience in other HOAs and even in over 55 communities, far exceeds what is included in most communities. And so some of those would go up with an extra person there, such as water and wear and tear. So do we, that's just curious, it's in relationship to this, but it's really a broader thing that we identify what our monthly fee really covers. It's quite extensive, and it should be handy, I think, that's all.
Director Jarrett.
Well, I know that last year United put a chart like that in the breeze. That's what we need to do for third in the breeze, so that everybody can see a breakdown. Like, for example, $81 per landscape, because I know that fee, but there's a lot of other ones too.
Yeah, you know, and there's even, we do trash pickup, we do water, I mean, there is so much that we do. And having lived in other HOAs and having lived in another senior HOA community where none of that was included, those things, when there's a third person, does impact it. We understand with the new trash requirements, they're going to weigh our garbage. You know, so that if we could have a chart, something that lets people know what it is that they're really paying for might be helpful, having related to this, but not specific.
Okay, moving along, because I see it's now 12:18. We get
Yes.
finally to committee reports. Director Rain Sosak, you're up first with the report of the Finance Committee. Please.
Okay, and I'll try to go through this as efficiently as possible. The Finance Committee met on February the 1st, 2022, and therefore the figures that were available at that meeting and discussed were effective as of December 31st, 2021. If you will please put the slides up so that our members can follow. There's nothing more difficult than listening to numbers without a picture with it. The first slide that we have, we always show the overall income statement. And that is the assessment revenue, the non-assessment revenue, added up as our total revenue and shown against expense. And it's really something that is just broad. It includes every single fund we have. None of that is broken out. I will tell you now that our assessment revenue, because we'll be looking at it again, our assessment revenue as of December 31st was $34,600,000, and the non-assessment revenue of $1,645,000, with a total $36,245,000, and we'll be seeing that number again later. Our total expenses, and again, keep in mind, none of this is broken down by funds or by categories. So our total expenses, $37,445,000, left us with an unfavorable total expense of $1,200,000. But as you will see as we move on in the report, that is covered by various funds. If we move on to the next slide, we're going to be looking at, and we'll move through this fairly quickly, so be ready to click fast. We're looking now at the operating income. The operating fund is what we anticipate our expenses will be. And our assessment revenue solely for the operating fund was $20,968,000, non-assessment $1,550,000, for a total revenue of $22,518,000, again, to the operating fund exclusively. Total expenses from the operating fund at $23,639,000 left us with an operating fund deficit of $1,121,000, and that is covered in various ways. If we move on to the very next slide and we look at our income statement We saw those figures earlier, but now we're looking at it in comparison to the budget. And again, we're looking at overall, so it's that same figure of $34,600,000, which was equal to budget. Our non-assessment revenue, as you can see, was less than budgeted. We did not get the same revenue we anticipated, with a variance of $525,000. So our total revenue was $36,245,000, as you saw before. And those figures of net and of being unfavorable were pretty much the same. And you can see that's what interesting is that although our non-assessment revenue was not as high as we had anticipated in our budget, our total expense was also not as high as we anticipated in our budget. So we therefore came out with a variance favorable of $510,000. Let's move right along onto the next slide. This is a favorite, and it's one that, even as tired as everyone probably is right now, is a visual and very easy to see. Anything in the top part on orange going off to the right is favorable, and anything in yellow on the bottom part going off to the left is unfavorable. And you can see that outside services were extremely favorable to the tune of $2,601,000. And that primarily had to do with some of the outsourcing we did, some of the contracts we had, et cetera, a lot of it affected by COVID. Employee compensation, it was very favorable, but much of that really related to open positions and the effect of landscaping actually outsourcing 8 staff positions, which was quite helpful. So some of that may evaporate as we fill positions, but the outsourcing seems to be working well for us. Material supplies, also a little bit favorable. Utilities and telephone, unfavorable to $121,000. Again, with utilities, that's primarily water, and we've discussed that quite a bit. Our unrealized gain and loss, that has to do with our investments. We're going to do a little more deeper dive next month as we share that with you and how our investment strategy has changed in compliance with Davis Sterling, and also switching it to a format where we do not pay for any of the services, so we won't be having any losses. So that will be presented next month. We also had, as you move down, our investment income, which was $313,000, and our insurance, of which we knew was a bigger expense.
Just 2 comments?
Yeah.
If I could on this chart,
Yeah.
before you switch?
Did I switch?
No, before you switch. Okay. On the investment income was based on what we anticipated our income to be when it was invested in other vehicles than we currently switched to. So that investment income, we should not see come January 1 a negative anymore.
We cannot have a negative
Right, we
anymore.
will not see a negative there. And on the insurance, when we budgeted for 2022, we budgeted very differently than we budgeted previously. And we won't be taking money out, in all likelihood, I don't want to say for sure, but in all likelihood, we won't be taking money from the contingency fund, and we should see that number dramatically decrease, if not disappear as well.
Yes, and although we have, and thank you for that, and although we have budgeted for what we anticipate the new charges, I'd like to call everybody's attention, particularly our members, to page 4 of the most recent Village Breeze issue that just came out, that spoke to many community associations have been hit by massive and unbudgeted insurance increases. We have a special issue because of our requirements for the amount we must carry, but everybody got hit. We discussed it a little bit at length last month, but please read that, and I want you to, because there is a place you can write to at least say, help some of the HOAs with these insurance costs. So that's page 4 of the Village Breeze that just came out. And with that, if we can move on to the very next slide. And this is another visual that's quite helpful. You can see that the balance of the bulk of our fees and our bulk of our non-assessment revenues primarily come from fees and charges to residents. That's about 45%. And people are always wondering, what are those fees that we're putting in there? And that's permits inspections, and chargeable services. So that's the 45%. We then have the lease processing fee for a third, which is about 15%. So that's really a large part. On a smaller extent, laundry, resale processing fees, investment income, et cetera, as you can see on the chart. But it's a nice way to get a real sense of what percentage of our revenues come and where they come from. And moving on to the very next one, showing our expenses, also in this kind of a pie chart where you can see the bulk of our expenses are employee compensation and expenses related to that, 34%, and outside services, which is really charges and salaries, employment as well, in so many ways, is 23%. And to a smaller extent, the utilities, the insurance, in a very small extent, those last few listed. And so let's go on, in the interest of time, to the non-operating fund. We started with operating fund, now we have the non-operating fund, which is the replacement funds, the disaster fund. Unappropriated expenditures fund is really our contingency fund. Those are the things that we have to prepare for that weren't necessarily anticipated. And the garden villa fund. And as you can see, if you look at our beginning balances versus our current balances, the replacement fund has increased from $17,437,000 to $19,303,000. The disaster fund has gone down a little. That part of that money was used to help cover the insurance costs. The unappropriated expenditures of the contingency fund has decreased a little bit, as well as we had some unexpected expenses, but that's what that fund is there for. And the garden villa fund is very, very small, as you will see on our very next pictorial slide. But it did go up from $89,000 to $104,000. And that's interesting because lots of work was done on the garden villa rec rooms and they look great. So if we can move over to the next one, we are almost through with this report. And this is a nice one because you can see how the balances in those funds have moved up and down over the years, moving from 2017 to 2021. And there you can just see a visual that the replacement funds have improved over those years, the disaster fund slightly smaller, the unappropriated expenditures or contingency fund slightly smaller, and the very teeny tiny grayish line across the top is garden villa. And I'd like to close with the exciting good news of the resale history and the resale report, if you'll move to that next slide. And we had a very robust 2021. This is the figures as of end of year, so it is a full year's report. And if you can see year over year, 2019 and 20 were very close in terms of the average resale price, but there was that huge drop in resales during 2020 and the beginning of COVID. Last year in 2021 was a very robust year, 493 resales with an overall average price increase of $45,000 per unit. And I just thought it was interesting as you look at that bar chart. If you look in the orange, which was 2019, you will see that February and April had dips. There was also one in June, but February and April for sure had dips. If you go over to 2021, there were dips in February and April again, although not as great. But the rest of the year, moving on from May to the rest of the year, was extremely robust. And so I think that will speak well of plans for the future. And with that, that's the Financial Committee's report. Our next meeting, in compliance with our schedule, will be March 1st. It's always the first Tuesday of the month at 1:30, and assuming all goes well, right here in the boardroom.
Okay, thank you. Next is the Architectural Control and Standards Committee, which I chair. We met January 24th. The committee sent forward for consideration at today's meeting the following items: contractor violation policy, the alteration fee schedule, and the hot water heater huts. So clearly, the committee has been very busy over the last couple of months and put all three of those items on 28-day notification today. In addition, the committee continued discussion on creating a policy for handrails in common areas. This will be discussed again at the next meeting, which is scheduled for February 28th at 9:30, and it will be an in-person meeting here in the boardroom. Next up, we have the report of the Communications Committee. Director McCary.
Thank you, President Munchnick. The Communications Committee meeting Committee for Third Mutual last met January 12th. The next meeting is going to be April 13th at 1:30 p.m. And it's undecided if it's going to be virtual or in person.
Okay, now we have the report of the Maintenance and Construction Committee. Director Engdahl?
All right, thank you, Director Munchnick. The MNC meeting, or MNC only meets every other month, and I think the last meeting was January 3rd, so I've probably reported on most of that. There are a couple of things I'll add, though. I think I mentioned that the Make-Ready EV site at Gate 14 had one of two sites there had been rejected by SCE, and the other one, they wanted more spaces, more parking spaces committed than we really wanted to commit to it. That's still being negotiated. There is one other residential area in Third, which is currently being evaluated as a test site for upgrading the power to support EV charging. Gate 11, the groundwater problem there was a walkthrough, I believe, what was last week, and regarding the RFP and bids from design contractors are expected soon, I think by the end of this month, as I recall. Staff has also been requested to investigate the efficacy of our solar panel program and consider if expansion of the program would be beneficial. We have no results on that at this time. The next meeting for the third M&C committee is March 7th.
Thank you, Director Engdahl. Next is report of the Parking and Golf Cart Subcommittee. Director Laws.
Yeah, Parking and Golf Cart Subcommittee is chaired by Kush Bada, but he's not here today, so I'm giving the report. We met Wednesday, January 19th. That was the first meeting since the October board elections. I'm new to the committee. The chair, Kush Bada, is also new, so we talked about some of the issues that we've been hearing about recently. There's a few cul-de-sacs where when too many electric vehicles are plugged in, the breakers click off and no power goes anywhere. So we've requested staff to get some cost proposals to upgrade those types of cul-de-sacs to resolve those issues, and we should get those costs by the next meeting. There's also several cul-de-sacs where there's not enough golf cart parking, so staff presented some options of paving over some planter areas between some carports, so we asked for them to provide some costs for that information, and those costs should also be provided during the next meeting, which is scheduled for Wednesday, March 23rd. Thank you.
Okay, next up is the Garden Villa Rec Room Subcommittee. Director Jarrett.
The subcommittee met on November the 10th. The next it met on September the 29th of 2021. The next meeting will be February the 23rd at 1:30 p.m. It's a hybrid meeting.
Okay, thank you. Next up, the Landscape Committee. Again, Director Jarrett.
The Landscape Committee met on February the 3rd, and we had a few tree requests, far fewer than usual because of the COVID problems with some of the staff members, the arborists. We did approve the staff's recommendation to deny the request for the removal of one sugar gum tree because removal was found to be unnecessary at this time. VMS Director Weeman gave this department head update, which was quite interesting. He mentioned in the January windstorm, we only lost 2 trees compared to the storm late last year, where we lost 38 trees. VMS has a storm response program where most all landscape staff spends the first day after a wind event performing a widespread cleanup. Director Women gave an update on the project log and where we are with the contracts. The tree status report was reviewed by the committee. The staff has been finding gardens being planted by residents in common area. This is prohibited and is exactly one of the reasons the water bills go up. People using hoses hooked up to hose bibs that are using expensive potable water. Director Weeman presented the KPIs for landscape the year ending 2021, and I'll present that report here next month. Next month, the committee plans to roll out our campaign on encouraging homeowners to convert to drought-tolerant yards and ending up with a rebate from Metropolitan Water for doing so. It is important for residents to get involved in helping us solve our issues. The next meeting will be on March the 3rd in the boardroom at 9:30 a.m. Remember, save water, conserve.
And that leads directly into the next committee report. Director Rain Sosak, the Water Committee.
Perfect timing. And this is not just the Water Committee, it is in fact the Water Conservation Committee, and conservation just continues to be important. We thought we were kind of home free in November with that deluge from Mother Nature. And unfortunately, January and February are turning out to be the driest months in history. So we never can depend upon that. We transport our water hundreds of miles from either Northern California or Colorado. And so it's something we just have to live with. And I therefore urge all of you to attend. It'll be a virtual meeting, but please tune in. The Water Conservation Committee next meeting is next week, February 24th at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We only meet quarterly. We have to really look at that schedule and whether or not that should be more frequent, we will have to see. And I do, again, want to direct your attention to the Village Breeze. It was just full of great information this time. And on page 7, El Toro Water District issued a request to residents to voluntarily reduce their usage by 15%. We all can do it, and I know there's a lot of focus. I get a lot of questions from other parts of the village. Well, but if we could meter it and look, well, we have buildings that have lots of units on the same meter. We just all need to cut down. Whatever you're doing, use less. Whenever you turn the faucet on, does it really have to keep running while it's on, like when you're brushing your teeth or shaving? So with that, please, I urge you to come. I urge you to watch your water usage and decrease where you can. We're all in it together.
Thank you very much. And last, we have the Resident Policy and Compliance Committee. We met on January 26th, and this committee sent forward for your consideration at today's meeting the additional occupancy fee, which is on 28-day notice. And in addition, the committee discussed the policy related to the distribution of materials in the village, actually in third, and is preparing a policy for consideration that includes door hangers. This will possibly be coming forward next month. The next meeting of the Resident Policy and Compliance Committee is March 2nd and will be an in-person meeting here in the boardroom. We now move to our GRF committees, and the very first one for report is the Community Activities Committee, and that's you, Director McCary, if you would.
Thank you, President Munchnick. The Community Activities Committee, excuse me, I had a frog in my throat. The committee met last January 13th. The February meeting was canceled, and the next one is scheduled for March 10th, 2022 at 1:30 p.m., and it will be a virtual meeting. Thank you.
Okay, and now, you're still up, don't go away. You have the Equestrian Center Ad Hoc Committee.
Thank you. The Equestrian Ad Hoc Committee last met January 26th. The next meeting is going to be March 30th, 2022 at 1 p.m. as a virtual meeting.
Thank you. And now we go back to Director Rain Sosak for the GRF Finance Committee report.
Which will be meeting tomorrow. And that will be a virtual meeting, and it looks like it's also going to be in the boardroom. And so please check. I believe it is in the boardroom as well. It is the first, they didn't meet actually in January. January's meeting was a closed special session. And so I urge all of you to come, and we'll find out what's happening.
Thank you. GRF Landscape Committee, Director Lewis, I see he's no longer with us at this point. He had an appointment that he had to attend to. So does somebody else have that report? If not, we'll move on. We have the GRF Maintenance and Construction Committee, Director Engdahl.
Thank you. The latest GRF MNC committee meeting was held on February 9th, and it was a very comprehensive three-hour-long meeting. Most of the time was dedicated to the SCE Change Ready 2 program for electric vehicles. Art Major reported the results of a recent SCE review. We had submitted 9 potential designated sites, including clubhouses and golf course. Some of the suggestions we made were altered by SCE, but 2 of them were rejected outright. because they either were not feasible, or there was, because of transformer location, or they felt it was financially impractical for them. A second major discussion was on the bus, let me get that straight, the bus bench relocation. Apparently, a number of benches have been hit by or run into by some of the people with some mobility problems, mainly because those benches have been installed right on the sidewalk itself. And this was originally part of the transportation system, and they've been maintained by them. Current plan calls for half the old benches to be replaced and relocated just off of the main sidewalk in 2022, and the remainder of them in 2023. Chuck Holland also presented a PowerPoint show of planned revision to the residential services call center area to provide improved services and better accommodate the personnel required, and also provide separation respecting some of the COVID considerations. Some discussion ensued concerning that because of sound interference, and particularly relating to telephone calls. Refurbishment of the golf driving range was also discussed. Present plans are much reduced from the initial $500,000 and call only for limited grading to correct drainage problems before amending the soil and replanting the turf, and basically using the present irrigation system. A design contract to renovate the former exercise area on the third floor of this building, a community center building, for the Human Resources Department was discussed, as was a feasibility study concerning rebuild of Building E. However, after discussion of what department would be moved to which location vacated by the previous one, kind of in hopscotch fashion, both of these were throttled back slightly pending a more global consideration of space availability and usability and requirements involving all the departments, at least all of them that were concerned on that. And that's scheduled for about April, well, it'll be before the next committee meeting, which is presently scheduled for March, I believe it's, April 13.
Okay, thank you. And before you close out, would you talk to us about the Clubhouse Facilities Renovation Ad Hoc Committee?
Okay, we'll continue here. The last meeting for that committee was January 28th. The discussion continued around plans and functionality of the facility, particularly Clubhouse 1. Guy West gave an educational PowerPoint presentation to small rooms, or regarding small rooms, to both Clubhouse 2 and 1. He discussed the meaning of reduction noise coefficient and how that's used in effectiveness of the various methods. He gave preliminary indication of approximate cost versus effectivity of some of these techniques. And several methods of noise reduction from the drop-in or for the drop-in lounge patio were also discussed. Let's see, there was a response to an RFP for surveying window measurements in Clubhouse 1, both of which ran in the range of $3,500. I don't know of anything new on that yet. One good point is the mostly cast iron waste line serving Clubhouse 1 was surveyed and found to be in good condition, requiring no blockage, but epoxy lining was recommended. Let's see, a subcommittee headed by Director Dobson, formerly of Third, had contacted several interior designers regarding coordinated design of Clubhouse 1 facility. Only a few of the potential designers seemed interested, and they wanted to basically take charge of the whole program. Ultimately, a motion was passed to have staff develop a scope of work and an RFP for an interior design coordinator based upon the committee's previously voiced desires. Seismic data was again reviewed. Reports indicated that the Clubhouse 1 area is not in a liquefaction zone, nor is it subject to flooding or landslide because of earthquake. And the existence of a blind fault, while possible, but presently unknown, seems statistically unlikely. Consequently, it was decided to proceed with the beautification program at this time without any extensive and costly seismic results or seismic retrofit. The next clubhouse renovation ad hoc committee is TBD, but likely to be late February.
Thank you very much for that very detailed report and update. Next up is Media and Communications Committee, Director McCary.
Thank you. Thank you, President Munchnick. The GRF Media and Communications Committee last met on January 17th. The next meeting is scheduled for February 22nd at 9:30 a.m. as a virtual meeting.
Thank you. Next up, Mobility and Vehicles Committee, Director Cook.
Yes, the committee last met on February 2nd. The next meeting will be April 6th. In the February 2nd meeting, there was a discussion about the 2021 ridership has increased since post-COVID. Just a reminder of what our transportation system consists of. The three programs are the Fixed Route Easy Rider, which has a total of 9 18-passenger buses. The next is Journey Program, which is for pre-approved residents with medical needs. There's one shuttle bus is used for this program. And then finally, we have the Boost Program, which is a contractual partnership with Lyft, Inc. And this can be used when the fixed bus route system is not in use. The other things they discussed were the GRF vehicles sent to auction and the delivery of new vehicles. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. And the next meeting is April 6th at 1:30 p.m. in the boardroom and as virtual meeting. Next up, Security and Community Access Committee.
Thank
Director
you.
McCary.
Thank you, President Munchnick. The Security and Community Access Committee last met October 25th, 2021. Reports were given. The next meeting is scheduled for February 28th at 1:30 p.m. in the boardroom and as a virtual meeting. Thank you.
Disaster Preparedness Task Force, Director Rain Sosak.
That task force meets quarterly, and our last meeting was on January 25th of this year. Most of the meeting was really a great deal of discussion, talked about revitalizing the program of volunteers and what they should be called. Block captains, should we have the building captains ask them? It was an entire discussion about the best thing to call them, and most important, to revitalize that list and to have training for them. So you'll be hearing more about it, and the next meeting will be in 3 months.
Thank you very much. And next up, Director Frankel, report of the Laguna Woods Village traffic hearings, please.
The meeting was held on January 19th. There were 4 violations, one of which was rescheduled. The other 3 violators, 2 for speeding, 2 for stop signs, and 1 for parking, all were found guilty. The next meeting is tomorrow. There'll be 4 violations, 2 stop signs, and 1 speeding, and 1 driver's license.
All right, and I just want to point out again to everybody who's listening that those are the people who are contesting their traffic violations. There are certainly a much larger number of tickets written by security for moving violations in the community, and many of those people just choose to pay the fine. So the numbers that you're hearing don't reflect the actual amount of activity that security engages in keeping the village safe for pedestrians and for drivers. All righty, next up, the GRF Strategic Planning Committee. That last met on January 10th. The report was given. That was an organizing meeting. The next meeting is March 9th at 1:30 in the boardroom and will also be virtual. Next up, the Revenue Resources Ad Hoc Committee.
That would be me.
That is who? Director McCary going to speak to that?
Yes, I am. Thank you, President Munchnick. The GRF Revenue Generation Ad Hoc Committee, is that the one? Yes, met on February 8th. There was a lot of discussion follow-through from the previous meeting that talked about ways to generate revenue for GRF. And there were two ideas that bounced around at the last meeting, and we discussed those in length. The first one had to do with an idea about setting up a bistro/coffee shop in an area. Several members of the committee did go to a couple of site locations to look at the possibility. However, after much discussion regarding the cost of labor and the cost of food, the committee decided to put that idea on the back burner and revisit it again next year. The other idea that was discussed had to do with a tee box sponsor in terms of the golf course, maybe having advertisers put their names on the tee boxes. And so that idea was talked about and discussed at great length. The community seems to have some momentum behind that idea, so staff were directed to put together some costs and bring that back to the next meeting for a discussion. The next meeting for this committee is scheduled for March 8th, 2020, and it will be a virtual meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. And last but not least, the Information Technology Advisory Committee. Director Laws, you have some good news for us, right?
I think so, yeah. Information Technology Advisory Committee, or ITAC for short, last met on Friday, February 4th. They tend to meet weekly. For the past several ITAC meetings, the ITAC team has been working on a presentation to the various boards to recommend the funding and continuation of work on a new computer system to better manage and support the processes and activities to operate Laguna Woods Village. The new computer system would be used by staff, residents, and boards. And last Friday, February 11th, that presentation was made to the board members of 3rd, United, and the Towers, who ultimately voted to approve the recommendation and continue on with that. So next steps are working with the consulting team that's going to be helping get that going and implemented on developing a detailed plan for the next few months of effort. And the ITAC will next meet this Friday, the 18th. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. That brings us now to future agenda items. Is there anything for future agenda items at this point? Director Rains-Osak.
I just want to remind everybody that we have tentatively scheduled the general manager, Dennis Cafferty, the general manager of the El Toro Water District, to be our guest and to address our members and handle any questions they might have. We have been waiting for him to be able to come to an in-person meeting because we feel there will be a better interchange of ideas. So assuming all is back to semi-normal for March, we look forward to having Dennis Cafferty as our guest at that meeting.
Okay. Anything else? We'll now go round for director comments. I'll start on my far left with Director Laws.
No further comments today.
Thank you, sir. Director Frankel.
I'll pass, thank you.
Director Engdahl.
No more comment, thank you.
Director McCary.
Thank you. I just want to acknowledge Michaela and Michelle, new administrators and new staff, and this was their first meeting. You guys did a wonderful job of coordinating everything, so thank you to our new staff.
Now we'll go to Director Jarrett.
I just wanted to reach out to Director Cook to let him know that the 50 leaks that were taken care of were reported. It was in November, actually. It was when we had that big rainstorm, and we lost 38 trees at the same day, the same storm, just so you know. Thank you.
Okay. Now I'm looking at Director Cook. Director Cook, final comment?
No comment.
Thank you. Director Rains-Osak.
No comment except to thank our members for their active participation. It's exciting to know that they're reading the communications, they're calling in, and although from now on, if we have lots of comments on the same topic, they might be summarized, it's wonderful to get them, and it's great to know that our residents and members are involved.
Director Wayne.
No comment, thank you.
And now we'll go to the CEO, CEO Foster.
Thank you. I was just going to extend my thanks to Michelle and Michaela as well. They had quite a busy meeting and did a great job. Thank you.
I also want to say thank you. And Grant, not to be left out of the picture. Grant, any final comment? This may be your final meeting with us. Is that possible?
I will be moving to
to IT at the end of this week, so yes, that would be correct.
So I want to say, on behalf of Third Board, I want to say a very special thank you to Grant Schultz for all of the work he has done. He has been an outstanding person to work with. He's always been accessible. He's been very, very supportive. He's gone way beyond the responsibilities of his position. He stepped in and took over as interim corporate secretary when we lost Cheryl Silva. So Grant, on behalf of Third Board, not only do I say thank you, but I wish you well in your new position. Thank you very much. As for Michaela and Michelle, thank you for being here. We look forward to working with you in the future. And to everybody who may still be out there listening after all this time, thank you for all of your earlier comments and suggestions and ideas. We hope that you'll continue to submit them to us. We're very interested in hearing what you, the member, has to say. It helps guide us in our decision-making process. So thank you again, and we'll recess. It is now 12:57, and we'll reconvene upstairs for the closed meeting. Thank you, everyone.